नवविमर्श पॉडकास्ट में yes so today we are going to start a very interesting philosophical discussion. So the team at Navimmersh has created a presentation for the audience, and we are going to talk about something very fascinating, interesting, and unknown to most people: the fantasist, Julius Julius Evola's vision of sacred hierarchy. I don't think too many people would be aware of his name, let alone his philosophy, his understanding, and very interesting story of transformation. Lot of people who are in their 30s, 40s, 50s go through a bit of transformation in terms of their perspective, their vision towards life, the vision towards themselves. So we have with us Rishi, Ninar, and also the admin is with us. So namaste to everybody. Jai Shri Ram.
Namaste to everyone.
Namaste, Rama. Namaste to all
Namaste,
of the audience
Bhabomoy.
as well.
So yes, so before we start the presentation, because this is very unknown topic to me as well, so I will be learning with you guys as well today. So before we start the presentation, just can you give us an overview, like what is this mysterious name and a mysterious person we're going to talk about today?
So, namaste to all the viewers once more, and welcome to this stream. First thing, before we go on this uncomfortable intellectual journey, I just wanted to give a disclaimer about the facts. If you can move on to the next slide. So, yeah. So, in this presentation, we examine the philosophical ideas of this person, Julius Evola, for educational purposes only. So Evola's views, including his rejection of equality, democracy, human rights, as well as his defense of fixed hierarchies and spiritual elitism, are presented here to understand the influential strain of anti-liberal thought, not to directly endorse it. His association fascism and post-war extremism reflects the dangerous real-world consequences of these ideas. So we study Evola not because his conclusions are correct or as an indictment on him as a cartoonishly evil figure. No, that he is not. But because we want to understand why some find modernity spiritually unsatisfying, and we need to engage seriously with uh, one of the most serious critics of modernity, despite his faults. So, at last, I would like to simply say that critical examination is not endorsement. And yes, now with that established, we can talk about what we're actually dealing with today. So, today we are going to talk about one of the 20th century's most challenging and most morally controversial figures. So, Julius Evola, he lived in the times when the world saw probably the most change in hundreds of years. He was born in the late 1800s, I think 1890s something, and he lived through World War One. He actually even served as a soldier during World War One for his country, Italy. After that, he became a painter, where he used to make lots of avant-garde paintings. So all the kinds of experimental things, many of us find kind of meaningless in their style, right? So yeah, he was that kind of painter at that time, and somewhere along the line after his you can say time in the army, his time doing all this art, he kind of began contemplating. He began to find life meaningless and began to contemplate on things like suicide. That is when he encounters Eastern philosophy, specifically through a person called Rene Guénon, who we will cover briefly. And that is when he truly changes and becomes quite a philosophical man. After that, what happens is, as we know, is history that he also becomes he engages with fascist philosophy, both as a critique of it and sometimes in appraisal of it. This is quite an interesting thing we have to note. He was also injured during the World War II, if I believe, in a bombing in Vienna. The way he gets injured is also quite an interesting story. We can cover that as well. And later, he was also made to stand in trial for his fascist ideas, because in Europe, as you know, people who were too fascist, they had to justify that they had not collaborated with the fascists in any way. He had to, and he actually survived the trial in a way, which was quite a unique case. So, all that aside, what makes Evola worth our time? I would think that it's not about his ideas being objectively good or objectively better than the ideas we have today, but that his ideas can at least provide us a lens to rethink some of the ideas that we uh, take as fundamental and for granted in our modern world. Evola, as a name, he stands as the contrarian to everything liberal and everything that modernity stands for. If you take a few common words, like in our modern world, we have what do we associate with a modern world? Say words like equality, like democracy. Upenda, you can also give me a few words you associate with the modern world.
A modern word means scientific word or a non-scientific word?
Scientific also, yes. We can say, like I was saying, equality, democracy. Then you said scientific. That is another word we associate with it. Then maybe you can say rights. Rights is one concept that is very modern. Then
Duty.
duties is not modern in that sense. I'm talking about everything modern. So
Okay,
that way,
you're talking about
yeah.
specific which came out of the 19th or sorry, century,
Freedom.
or
19th, 20th
18th
century.
18th century. Yes,
Yes.
freedom of speech is one part. Correct? Freedom of speech or speech.
Freedoms. Yes. Freedoms in general. Then what we say, you can say even materialism and
Materialism is
what?
a
Yeah.
Yeah. So basically, these things: equality, rights, materialism, scientific method using that. So these things are what we associate with modernity. So Evola, he takes a completely contrarian route to everyone who has gone so far, and his idea is that that kind of um, what do you call it? There is a kind of desacralizing in this desacralization in this word, that people don't find inherent meaning in a lot of their actions, what they're assigned to do, uh, the circumstances they're born into, or the circumstances that life forces them into them. They don't find any meaning in that. They don't find any meaning in the structures of life, that someone is above them, someone is below them, or that yeah, basically these kind of things. But Evola, he believes that, you can say, even to an extent we Hindus do, that there is actually meaning in everything. And he also believes that this meaning was lost purposely in the West due to these kind of new philosophies, which kind of reduced everything to science, reduced everything to a mechanical kind of, you can say, a point of view where everything is seen as as effect and you can say action and consequence, and not something with bigger and bigger context than you can imagine. So yeah, that was an introduction to him. Rishi and Bhupendra, if you have
uh,
any things to say on that.
yes, yes. So first thing first. So like he's a very enigmatic person, a very mysterious person, because not too many people know about it, and people who know and read about him, they get perplexed by his views on many things. which we today think are quite right, they are righteous, and he's in his own intelligence, in his own perspective and his reason, he thinks they are sacrilege. So I have one question. That question arises from my contemplation in multiple times when I read philosophies, when I read and watch content. That this scientific method, correct, as the only method by which you can actually uh, logically deduce something which can be established as a truthful enumeration, is that again scientific method or scientism is again a very unscientific way to look at things. Yes.
To a certain
So
extent, yeah.
yeah, Rishi, you can continue.
Yeah, to a certain extent, there is a sort of dogma in it involved. So the usage of scientific method was preferable because it produced verifiable and predictable models at the end of the day. Because the
And
products
also
that came out
replicable.
of it were, and also
Also
replicable,
replicable.
absolutely. Yes. So this got too much of prominence after Enlightenment, especially as we get to see. Uh, but with it came
Rishi,
a sort of
Rishi,
religion into it.
Rishi, I like to just intervene. Sorry for the interjection, but actually that will make
Okay.
the conversation more fruitful. So when you are seeing that
Mhm.
the age of enlightenment, correct, where like for justifiable reasons, correct, if you could replicate, if you could show physically, empirically, that this is my theory, this is the result, and this I can measure and I can prove that it works by whatever means. Correct. There are multiple means of reproducing and proving that actually my theory is actually correct, and this is the physical proof of this that it actually is correct. So that is absolutely fine. Correct. So correct, in our own dharmic text, correct, in our dharmic frameworks, you have Shabda Praman, correct, you have Pratyaksha Praman. So the scientific method is looking at only as Pratyaksha Praman, as as the only criteria by which you can actually validate or invalidate a concept or a theory. But in our dharmic frameworks, correct, you have multiple pramanas. So, and every pramana is not applicable to every kind of theory that somebody wants to uh, make it available or make it available for inquiry. So in that context, correct, you are right. It is a kind of a dogmatic in its approach towards that. Correct. Again, I'll go to geopolitics. The Chinese perspective of the Middle Earth theory. The Chinese think that we are at the center of this world, so that only Chinese have the right to rule over the whole world, the whole earth. So we are the kings who would rule every place on earth because we are the Middle Kingdom. So this, and I'll go back again to little bit on the dogmatism. Correct. Why Enlightenment perspective that mysticism is something which is how would I, for a lack of better word, would say superstitious in nature, correct, which cannot be proven, which cannot be replicated, which has no basis in real terms in terms of pratyaksha praman. So do you think that enlightenment is a result of the dark ages of Christianism or Abrahamism, where the superstition was so much put upon people, on society, that society had to rebel against this like absurd things which were there in the scriptures, in Bible and other, and they were taken as eternal truth, and they were proven wrong. Then the society moved towards enlightenment in reaction to the dark ages of Christian theology. The
Precisely. So yeah, so basically, the Age of Enlightenment was a sort of reaction to the despotism which Christian thought process showed. because at times Christian thought process even rejected something which was available to our senses. If Christianity said, or the Christian thinkers or the Christian early fathers said, that the heavens are at certain distance, or at somewhere outside the earth, and when Galileo observes through his telescope something else, then it became a problem, and he needed to be educated, quote unquote, to change his views and to be somewhat nearer to Christian conclusions. And that's where the problem starts to rise. So again, there is an example, right? Nainer can speak on this, even you too would know. Bruno, there was this mathematician or science enthusiast called Bruno. He was burnt at stake because of his inquisitiveness and his heretical positions which he had taken. Copernicus had to publish his book posthumous about the heliocentric model of solar system being wrong. Sorry, heliocentric being right and geocentric being wrong, because that was the claim which was being made by the Christians due to the postulates which were made by early church fathers. So these were the things which led to a certain situation, which you can also see from the works of people like Francis Bacon as well. So Francis Bacon, even though he was a Christian, he supported Christian theology and all, still he paved a way towards a certain sense of empiricism, uh, being the main ideology for the upcoming generations, especially for the power elites, as he said that uh, depending solely on scriptures as a source of truth is not going to be helpful for us. And this, I think, they encountered especially after crusades, Dada. Maybe I can go somewhat tangentially into this, because it is said that when they interacted with the uh, Islamic, uh, what should I say, Islamic part of Europe, such as Spain and so on, they saw how developed they were. They saw what kind of scientific discussions and literature which was coming out of there. So that created a lot of changes, especially within the elites in Italy as well. So from there we see changes coming up, from translations of Toledo library books into Latin, and then suddenly we see Tycho Brahe, Galileo, and many others, then Leibniz, Newton, so on and so forth. The whole scientific revolution starts rapidly faster in Europe. We see that because till that time they were totally enamored by the Christian despotism. But after that, it had started to change because they knew that they were the ones behind, and it was the other ones who were a bit much more scientific. They were the ones who are advanced, and that's the result, I think. Nainer and Vimarsda, you can discuss on this much more. Yeah.
Yeah, I think I have already spoken, so maybe Nina has something he can share his thoughts, and then, or else we can move to the next slide.
No, I absolutely agree with you on most of the points. I don't have anything in particular to say. Just I wanted to mention briefly, I forgot to mention it earlier, that we are actually discussing this from a particular book called A World After Liberalism, written by Matthew Rose. So each of you viewers can look it up because most of our points and our understanding of Ebola come from there. And though he is critical of Ebola, I found his analysis quite useful as well for making our presentation. So yeah, from that we can continue to our first slide. So from here, I want to talk about the individual ideas of Ebola because they are what form the basis of his worldview. The first slide you can see, as you can see here, is magical idealism and the absolute individual. So what does this mean? So when we go back to Evola's life, we know that his philosophical journey it began with a personal crisis. After World War One, when he served as a soldier, he was an artist, and during that time in his artist, he tried out very, you can say, eccentric kind of art. And in general, because of the kind of art he saw around him, or perhaps because of the meaningless death in the war he saw, and various other reasons, he kind of got a very nihilistic attitude and began contemplating things like suicide. And his general attitude was that modern life has become spiritual. It has it lacks spiritualness, and is overall it sees the world as meaningless. Then what comes to him is a text from Rene Guénon, a particular guy who perhaps we'll discuss further ahead, about his writings on Buddhism. From those writings, he learns something quite radical, that he doesn't need to escape the world, but he rather needs to transcend by being by not being controlled by the world around him. So the idea around it is basically that meaninglessness or the spiritual emptiness that was being imposed on him by the times he lived in. This Buddhism which he saw, this philosophy which he saw coming from Rene Guénon, that was kind of spiritually liberating. That he saw no longer the need to look to his surroundings for the validation, but rather wanted to control his surroundings to actually find the meaning where he wants to seek it now. From this, what he develops is the idea of magical idealism. So the key insight from magical idealism is Evola rejects the entire purpose of philosophy as it's normally understood. As most philosophers want to gain theoretical knowledge about reality, right? And Evola said, no, we are not concerning ourselves with reality. But his concern is that philosophy is actually guided towards self transformation. This is quite a different approach from normal philosophers. Say a normal philosopher will make certain observations about reality and then comment on it, that this must be the way, that is so and so, that must be the way, something so and so. Evola says no, uh, that is none of our concern. All this around us, it is truly meaningless. And what philosophy truly serves for is for self transformation. So yeah, this is also what he calls the absolute individual, the individual who isn't shaped by philosophy which is guessing about the nature of the others and kind of wasting its time. Rather, it knows that the philosophy exists for self transformation. So there is another way to think of this. I made some notes on this, that most people, the ones who are guided by, you can say, modern philosophy, Evola would call them other directed, that they absorb their values, their desires, their conditions, their self understanding from their culture, their family, or their society. They're like, as the wind blows, they are also blown with it. They are very, you can say, passive about their circumstances. So, in the conception of the absolute individual by Evola, the his idea is that the philosophy, when it is guided by this magical idealism, that wind which blows is basically guided is the one which you guide, and you are not blown by along with it. Yes, that is the basic idea behind this conception. Any thoughts on this, Bhupendra Rishi?
No, not from my side. It's too complex for a mortal like me to comment on this.
Yes, yes,
It
So on
requires
this,
years of contemplation.
absolutely.
indeed, indeed. So Nainer, could you tell us as to um, why did he consider Buddhism to be so beneficial towards his own life journey? What was so special that he found in Buddhism, as opposed to other sort of philosophies which were floating around and at that time in Europe?
So
Okay, let me answer.
this is
Okay,
also
let me answer this. Let me answer this.
you can
This is
you can try.
interesting
Yes,
question.
yes.
See, the correct the modern age, correct the modern age where, so correct there is how would I define it? Correct. So let's say before the modern age or before the machine age, okay, we call machine age, where we sort of like got to understand how the nature works, and we could actually tweak nature and take control of nature. Humans have been trying to actually like change their environment and take control of the environment, and they were somehow able to do this. Fire, correct, the fire which was in, like they found that fire already existed, but the humans learned how to control fire. So we had always had this controlling nature among humans to actually and make sense of the world and try to manipulate it at our will or individual's will or a community's will. Now that is one aspect of it, but that is a very small time frame of our existence. We have always been like living in sync with the environment or nature, and the way, and that's how our like what we call manas, correct, our minds, our nature has evolved, our bodies have evolved. But this modern age, the advent of machines, we finally thought that we have taken complete control of our of the nature where we live, the environment we live, and we can do whatever we want with the nature or the environment we have, and that created a kind of a separation between our ancient bodies and ancient mind, correct. So we can't live without sun, correct. So now that if I give you a statement that sun is the source of our existence, sun is the source of our uh, energy, and sun is which sustains us. Now to a common layperson, that makes no sense. The sun is there, correct, it rises and it goes down, correct. It is not making, and that common person cannot relate that how does sun help me have a chapati food, energy, whatever it is there, correct. So there is no correlation between the statement and his lived reality which a common man lives, correct? I need money, I need mobile phone, correct, sun will not give me that. So this reality that modern world presented to a common person, right, was something very different from what we have known prior to modern civilization tools and machines. And that is the gulf which you are talking about Buddhism. So the Eastern philosophy is a syncretic understanding harmonious living with our human nature. So, what is our human nature? Our human nature is compassion. Our human nature is uh, life, respect life. Okay. Our human nature is to actually live in uh, like incompatible with our surrounding, so that because we know inherently that still now, as of now, we are dependent on nature. When an earthquake happens, until now we don't know how to control earthquakes, so we have to live in sync with that thing. We will build buildings which can withstand earthquakes. We are not going to prevent earthquakes, so that is, and that harmonious has been there for last a million years in terms of human existence. This modern age disconnected that cord of synthetic existence of humans and the nature. Now the modern age broken that thread, and that created a gulf which we all, correct, our manas needs
Right.
this spiritual understanding, spiritual energy, purpose, correct. When we say I lack purpose, so how do you define purpose? Is purpose a fruit that you can pluck and say okay I have the purpose? So these intangible concepts, which actually are fundamental to our existence, is being lost due to modern perception of control over our surroundings, our environment. And that's where the Eastern philosophies, which are inherently lives in conjunction with our environments, gives us back that whole, that spiritual whole, which was created by the modern society. Yes, Nina, you can go ahead now.
Yes. So, Rishi, any thoughts on that thing about Buddhism?
Yeah, Vimarshda's comments were actually good, and it went to the core of the problem as to why there was such an attraction towards Buddhism. Mm, because, as you said, right, the meaninglessness of the modern world was kicking in, and at that time, if you read a Buddhist text or you study that, you get to know something very different, but yet very similar, which used to be truth of our life, but it was forgotten because of the uh, craziness of the advancement during modern age.
Yeah,
Yeah,
the
that
superficial,
was my
perspective that history has ended. Correct. The Francis Fukuyama, after the Second World War, Francis Fukuyama said the end of history. We have done
yes,
everything which can be done. So that is the superficial, correct, dambho in Bengali, correct, say. That dambho of we have
yep,
done everything which can be done. So we have conquered nature through atomic energy. So, and how futile that arrogance is of humans, that is showing us today.
absolutely. Yeah, Nina, what was your? Uh, I wanted to know your intention. To why did you ask me the question?
So
Comment.
uh, we were talking about Buddhism, right? Why he chose Buddhism. Actually, he
Yeah,
has
yeah, yeah.
written a whole text on Buddhism as well. It's called Doctrine of Awakening. In that, one main contention of his that is kind of unrelated to Bhupendra's point, but also I feel that is also important that Buddhism it kind of focuses on self mastery more than you can say you know how traditionally normally people just portray it as about compassion about you can say ahimsa, but according to him it is more about self mastery, and that is why he also later goes on to call it aristocratic, because that aristocratic value, that is self mastery, that comes to his mind.
Oh, interesting.
One metaphor he gives is that the soldier that is lost behind enemy lines, he must rejoin his army through his own efforts, and this is what Buddhism teaches him.
Hmm. Very new perspective, I would say, because the rest of the world would see something very different out of Buddhism. It would box in only compassion, love, non-violence, meditation, and so on. Whereas, according to Evola, as you have, like, as you will be showing, I guess, in further slides and analysis, that
Yes,
he
yes.
was seeing self-control. That was the main value or virtue that he found. So,
So yeah, I
wanted to
can.
ask you then. Okay, okay.
Shall I move on to the next slide?
Yeah, of course.
And so, as we discussed, this is the point when he encounters Rene Guénon for the first time, and his worldview and the kind of way he approaches the world, the whole philosophy of his changes when he encounters Buddhism and Eastern philosophies through Rene Guénon. He discovers tradition, and this tradition, you can say, it's tradition with capital T. He believes that it is a transcendent realm, of sacred order that existed before recorded history and governed all genuine civilizations. According to him, it's not that different cultures had different traditions. He believes that there was one primordial tradition that expressed itself in through different cultural forms. For example, we have Hindu tradition, or in his Italy, there would be Roman tradition. In Persia, there would be Persian tradition, and so on. For him, he points out that these look different on the surface, but their inner core, it remains the same. That is hierarchy, sacred authority, and the infusion of daily life with transcendent meaning. That means that every action, every, you can say even non-action, that has a meaning to it.
Okay, one thing which I think just I got a
I'll
question
just
in my
complete
mind.
my point on this, Dada.
Go ahead, go ahead,
Then
go
you,
ahead.
yeah. So according to him, uh, nothing in this world in traditional societies is purely secular. Even when a farmer is, say, planting crops, he's actually participating in a kind of ritual that connects him to a cosmic cycle. So you know how a farmer plants the crops, harvests it, plants again, harvests it. He sees that cyclical nature as the nature of things in this world. Even say when a warrior goes to fight, he is actually seeing a spiritual drama. When a king is ruled, he is channeling divine authority through him that governs the masses. According to Evola, every kind of the social role, every kind of responsibility, every kind of you can say status you have, whether it be from the king to down to the lowest, everything was a pathway for the divine or the sacred order to express itself in a way. That in that way, the visible world, it was saturated with invisible meaning throughout. So this is why Evola also says that traditional man experienced nature as a great sacred. He experienced nature as, quote unquote, a great sacred animated body, the visible expression of the invisible. Everything was alive with spiritual significance, and critically, this tradition provided absolute certainty. There was no anxiety about meaning because meaning was already given. It was fixed and it was unchangeable. People knew their place, knew their duties, and knew the structure of reality. And nobody had to fight uh, between ideologies because everyone knew what their place in the world was. So, yeah, that is the point of his ideas on the world of tradition. Upendra, you can continue on this.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So correct. We were just discussing a few minutes ago regarding this gulf of like humans feel in a modern world, and see, the modern world doesn't have the word sacred in their own dictionary. Right? In the modern scientific way, scientific thinking, modern thinking, where everything has a material existence, but it doesn't have the word sacred. It doesn't
Yes,
even
everything is
recognize
secular.
that the is secular. There is no sacred. Okay, so I think that hits the nail on the head in terms of the meaninglessness, the purposeless of our lives is can be defined as the modern dictionary doesn't recognize the word sacred as an important part of our vocabulary, which the dharmic traditions, dharmic panths, like it can be Sikhism, it can be Buddhism, it can be Jainism, it can be Vedanta, and other schools, they recognize this sacred geography, the sacredness of the eternal energy, which is all pervades the whole universe. And for a modern mind, for a secular mind, the universe is just a random flow of energy and molecules. So that's where I think the crux of the argument lies. The modern human is miserable because it doesn't have the sacred, doesn't recognize the sacred energy which actually gives birth to us.
Indeed, I
Yes.
think that's the point. Yeah, so that's the point he's also hitting at, Evola, as Nainer has explained it extensively to us. Uh, in some portions, as Evola points it out, that how basic human activities, such as from eating to relations between a male and a female, commerce, games, to war and social interaction as well, everything was elevated by this tradition into something ritualistic, becoming activities whose very repetitiveness offered a glimpse of an unchanging eternal realm. So it was always harkening back to something transcendent. It was always trying to appeal or trying to replicate something of a huge a higher ideal unto the world below over here. And something very interesting is that for him, tradition was not really religious, quote unquote, as he apparently strongly denied, because religion, according to him, was something very problematic, as maybe Niner will tell us later on as to why that was the case with him. But human beings must eat, mate, fight, die, play, and obey, and it was the purpose of tradition to turn these mortal necessities into holy occasions. Tradition thereby protected human beings, healing the gap between their understanding of the social world and its fearful complexity, was the direct mission statement of Evola, I think, especially with his very famous work, which Nainer might be discussing about later on. So yeah, Nainer, please, if you can enlighten us much more on this issue of tradition and how he represented it in his famous work. Yeah.
Before Niner actually goes through exposition, let me like give you
Okay.
one more pointer in terms of the correct the bridge, the how do you say, the not a bridge but the gulf between the modern human and the traditional nature worshipping, nature loving human. Correct. The modern literature, correct, especially the modern dystopian literature. If you see there, the birth of a child, correct, the life giving aspect of our existence, correct, the way we are born, correct, the way a child is born, correct, when a life is created, that life creation is a mechanical process, not something which is connected to our human nature, love, compassion. So that aspect of human nature, which is how we have evolved over lakhs and lakhs of years, that is completely missing. Correct. If you see a Brave New World, okay, if you see other dystopian literature, human existence is just a mathematical equation, not something which is linked to human emotions or the eternal energy of universe. That also actually tells you that what where Evola is coming from, that devoid of our own understanding of nature, it has been completely wiped out of our dictionary of our life. And that's why we see that dystopian literature is a kind of a, like, gives you that impression where the love of the mother for the child doesn't exist in in modern terms, in terms of modern literature, in terms of modern dystopian writings.
Yeah, because value has been totally thrown out of our life, and every so-called valuable that there is only consumption at the end of the day. If consumption is satisfied, that alone is enough.
Yes.
Everything else, human
Yep.
emotions and higher standards, all are gone. Yeah, Niner, you wanted to say something.
Essentially, everything satisfies for the self and not anything higher than that. Even you can say that even in a religious sort of life, so there is still a higher goal, but without tradition, then there is no higher meaning or purpose to all the actions you do. Everything is just for yourself. And when you find out that you do not know what to do, you do not have a wish to do things, then of course you realize that there is no meaning in what you do. That is what Evola was confronted with during his time. Yes, so moving on to the next point, we cover now the doctrine, his doctrine of cyclical decline. So this is another way, another of his ideas that we should actually, which I think is one of his better ideas of the many. In this, he actually adopts a Hindu concept of cyclical time. That history, it moves through great cycles of decline and rather than progress. This is contrary to the Western notion that ever since you can say the beginning of history, humans have always been progressing forward and forward, especially when it comes to technology or you can say living standards. According to him, it's the opposite. So, according to him, we are, and also according to Hindus, we are currently living in Kali Yuga, the age of iron, that is the dark age of spiritual poverty. And something very unique about him is that he dates this beginning of this decline not to enlightenment or not even to you can say fall of Rome to you can say I think around 500 AD when Rome fell, or he even doesn't date it to Christianity. He dates it straight all the way back to 8th century BC. That is when all the philosophical traditions of Greece were going on. His basic
Hmm.
idea is that historical consciousness itself, that we are moving through history and in a positive direction, that itself was the first biggest fault of the West. Elaborating more on the points of the cycles, according to him, the golden age is the age of pure spiritual authority, where temporal and spiritual power they were perfectly united. Then comes the silver age, where the warrior nobility, where honor and hierarchy were still relatively sacred, even when there was a disconnect between the temporal and spiritual power. Then comes the Bronze Age, which saw the merchant class rise to dominance, where material concerns began overtaking spiritual ones, and where the earlier concepts of honor and hierarchy they began to lose meaning. And finally, as a consequence of everything that has passed through the earlier three ages, we come to the Iron Age, where the lowest elements of the material concerns rule, and all connection to the transcendence that was had when temporal and spiritual power were united, that has been lost. So, why this framework is crucial is because that for Evola, this kind of modernity is not just a recent mistake we can fix. It's not a mistake we started maybe 100 years or 150 years or maybe 500 years back that we can just fix by tweaking some policies or a few living changes, right? According to him, this is a culmination of almost thousands of years of degeneration. That means that a singular event, say, for example, the many point to the French Revolution, or many point to what else, World War Two maybe, or World War One maybe. These singular events did not matter in the great scale of things. But they were the symptoms of the spiritual decay that was going on for thousands of years, and it was progressing downwards and downwards. According to him, you can't even reform your way out of it. You can't even vote your way out of it. And this is how history is actually even meant to be. This kind of view I find a little nihilistic, but you can't even deny it in a way because it is kind of realistic also. And
Indeed.
this is also how we Hindus view the world, right?
Yeah, because modern
So when
society is a kind of machinery which breeds this nihilism, correct? And the modern philosophers, many of them were nihilists in many aspects.
Yes,
Yeah, Rishi.
he himself was a nihilist.
so there was this question of mine, like in your analysis, did you find anything foreign that was added into this whole cyclical age of decline concept, which even we also have, like that was added by Evola in his writings? Has he added something new into it, or has he copied what we have said and built upon it his own new interpretation?
So far as I know, one thing I found unique that at least I haven't encountered in our own Hindu texts. You can maybe disagree with me if you have seen something, but you saw the idea of how he says in the Bronze Age, the merchant class is who takes over, and that is where the material conscious, basically the material concerns, they overtake spiritual ones. I found this observation quite unique and useful. What do you think of this? Has this been pointed out by our own thinkers before?
Our thinkers, yeah, they do not actually talk about this, right? So, that full example of that uh, a cow representing the whole structure of, what should I say, yugas, like the legs, each leg represent a uh, yuga, uh,
Yes, yes.
yuga or values, I think. I think it's values.
Yeah,
So
and
it's only
in
one
Kali
leg.
Yoga, the cow stands on only one leg.
Yeah, all other three have been smashed. So that was something which I knew of. But this is really interesting. Like in Bronze Age, he's saying that mercantile class is the elite, and therefore there is a transition from spirituality towards materialistic tendencies, and then it evolutes into the Kali Yuga. That would be the case, right? His interpretation.
Yes, that is what he is trying to
Hmm.
point out.
Interesting.
So I'll elaborate once more for the audience. So the golden age,
Okay.
according to him, is where the spiritual and temporal authorities, they're completely in sync. Everything has perfect meaning, and there is quite a lot of clarity among the masses, or you can say even among the elites about everything. The silver age is when is okay. I think he used the word the age of politics. That is when the you can say the warrior class, they begin more quarreling each other about the more political issues and so on, and that is one kind of degradation we see. The bronze age he points out is the age where the merchant class is propped up. That is when the material concerns become more important than the spiritual ones. And the iron age, as we know, is the one where you're completely degraded to the lowest level.
Hmm. Interesting. Vimarshta, any comments you have after listening to this interpretation, a novel one from a European thinker?
Not right now. I need to do the more deliberation.
Okay,
Fine, fine,
okay.
fine.
I'll continue with this slide then.
Absolutely.
So, the fundamental problem that he encounters in all of this, in all of his philosophies, that we will see from now, and which I also think is a valid observation to make, even from our perspective, is of desacralization. This is the fundamental problem. So, he sees desacralization as the draining of sacred meaning from daily life. As I had mentioned earlier, that in traditional societies, everything from the farmer picking, you can say harvesting his crop, from the king making decisions, everything was saturated with spiritual significance. Work wasn't just like earning money for the sake of your own, you can say, material satisfaction. No, It was a sacred vocation you held because your, say, maybe your family upheld it, or maybe it was a duty given to you by someone dear to you, and so on. And family wasn't just biology. According to him, it was participating in one ancestral change in name of lineage that stretches back through generations. Even warfare, according to him, it was a ritual of combat that offered glimpses of eternal truths in the form of a drama, which is quite an interesting take, if you ask me. Then some other points he makes in the same thing. He believes that modernity has stripped all this away, that work becomes purely wage labor, purely economic. Family becomes a lifestyle choice. You can either have it, or many people even choose not to have it at all. Warfare becomes industrial slaughter, and it is no longer a test of your skill. It is completely, how it is mechanized, and the scale at which it happens is completely destructive. And throughout all this, we've reduced everything to its functional, material dimension. One quote of his I liked very much was that man, like never before, has lost every possibility of contact with the metaphysical reality. We live in a world where materialism kills every possibility, deflects every intent, and paralyzes every attempt at aspiring to any higher. So, yeah, this creates what Evola sees as a fractured relationship with transcendence. So, uh, you might have heard that at the previous slide, I mentioned how in the golden age we are at complete sync between the temporal and spiritual realm. This is what he
Mm.
means, that this desacralization, that is what causes the desyncing of the temporal and spiritual realm. By temporal, I mean the material world and so on. So yeah, he sees this as a fractured relationship with transcendence. Traditional societies, they had a direct contact with the higher realm of order. They experienced the phenomenal world as supported and as sustained by the spiritual reality. Modern people, on the other hand, we have kind of lost this contact. We are lost with chaos. We are left with chaos, uncertainty, endless change, with no fixed reference points to actually find the meaning in the world that we seek. The result is for all to see that it is spiritual poverty. We have material abundance, but spiritual poverty, that existential emptiness inside us. For Evola, this is the real crisis of modernity. It's not that we're oppressed or not that we're poor. It's that nothing means anything anymore. That man of tradition who experienced nature, who experienced duty, who experienced, you can say, his roles at every level as a living sacred body, has been replaced by a modern man who sees only dead matter to be exploited and manipulated for profit. We've gained technology and lost our souls. So yeah, Bhupendra and Rishi, any points on this?
Amazing,
Hmm.
amazing.
No, I think Rishi might have something to say.
Yeah, this is such a poignant point which he put it out so long back. This lack of meaning has led to some very destructive movements, right, in the West, where uh, in pursuit of finding meaning, they create every new issues, every new age that they encounter, some sort of movement to uh, run behind. It's either political right now, so like politics is the main domain, I guess, for finding values. So basically, they will start with race or some of the other issues, societal issues especially. They will try finding meaning into it, and then they will engage in it, and then they will get tired of it as they will see no value into it, and then they will go to another one. It's like the whole consumer cycle. uh, when the cheese finishes, you wait for another uh, piece of cheese, and then you just move ahead, and that's it.
Exactly.
Just yeah, it's a rat race. Continuation. By the way, what do you think? Some like if any liberal guy gets to hear about these things, especially on desacralization, what do you think that his reaction would be to this?
So, uh, I do think that they would admit that these material realities are what really are the end thing, that there is nothing beyond them.
Hmm.
They truly believe, right, that the world is actually mechanical and there is no God running it or anything, that electrons move randomly uh, around the protons and neutrons, so on, and that it is a pure random chance that someone is born, a pure random chance that the earth is habitable or that the universe even came to be. So yeah, they truly do not see the meaning in it.
Hmm. Indeed. They would like say sacred is some sort of social construct just for trying to, I guess, constitute a society and so on. They will make what do they say? Post ad hoc rationalizations to escape away from it.
Yes,
That's what I
and
think.
their whole idea is that the order, quote unquote, is that there is no order. The universe truly works mysteriously for them. They do not wish to understand, or they
Amazing
have
for
kind of dogmatically accepted not to understand it.
it's amazing how for for the ones who tout themselves as scientific, they have this whole uh, issue with trying to engage with all of these things, and they will just avoid it as something mysterious and leave it alone. They will not engage with it.
Yes, mysterious
Interesting.
and random. That's what they leave it as.
Hmm.
Yes,
Mysterious,
So
Nirmal,
which
any
is
comment?
yeah, mysterious, which is absurd, illogical, superstitious, which has no bearing on reality. Reality is only a apple that you can eat.
yes, reality is only what you can see, nothing beyond that. What you can see, hear, taste, all that, nothing beyond that. That is what the world
So,
of a liberal is.
the generally correct disconnected from themselves, correct. So that's why okay, see, very example, correct, the four horsemen, correct, Rishi, the four horsemen, the who created this liberal, atheistic, nihilistic perspective
Ah,
of
yeah,
Oh, yes. Right,
correct.
right.
yeah, yeah,
Five
yeah.
or four? Is five or four? I just forgot the
Four,
number.
four, four,
It's five or
four.
four?
It's
Four
four. It's
horsemen,
four.
correct. Yeah, four
Yeah, yeah.
horsemen. So these horsemen who were actually championing the logical aspect of human existence are now saying, I am a Christian atheist.
Hmm.
After,
Yeah, cultural Christian.
yeah, I am a
Right, right.
culturally Christian. So, human beings are very adept at doing this, what we call correct, shenanigans, or the
Yeah, yeah.
hypocritical things.
Switcheroo.
Okay, exactly. Okay. So, like we suit correct. We just invent whatever we want, just to like make ourselves feel better.
Absolutely.
So, truth is is always the casualty when it comes to human perception.
Completely. It's the
So,
first casualty.
shall I move on to the next point?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
yeah. Go ahead.
Oh,
Yeah.
dangerous topic. Yep.
So, yes, this is where Evola's ideas they become quite controversial, or you can say he's really going out of the line to find the the conclusions of his.
Thank God to Lord Trump. Lord Trump has helped us a lot.
Ah, yes.
Yeah.
So this is about natural hierarchy and cosmic inequality. What he believes, what Evola believes, is that inequality, unlike what you can say others believe, that isn't a social problem to be solved. According to him, it is the way things are. That it is not only it is the way things are, it is actually the law of the cosmos that is to be recognized and to actually be honored. And his anti-egalitarian vision involves that human beings, that all human beings are not fundamentally equal, and that he also believes that it is a modern delusion that blinds us to this reality. Further on, Evola argues that recognize that human beings come in different spiritual types. There are those who are naturally oriented towards transcendent concerns, that they have a capacity for spiritual insight and self mastery. These are the form the basis of the ruling class, according to him. Then there are those oriented towards honor, courage, physical prowess. That comes under the warrior class or the warrior nobility. Below them come the merchants and the craftsmen oriented towards material production. And after them, there are people who lack higher aspirations entirely and who merely seek to live under material guidance of the other classes. For Evola, this is not just social hierarchy, it's actually ontological. He so controversial, but he actually uses the caste for these, the words caste for this. According to him, that even that the castes that they exist, they have different spiritual capacity that are innate and unchangeable. This is very controversial, of course. So, according to him, that some can innately undertake the path to become absolute individual, and others innately lack the strength. He even states this in a particular quote that the law of life is inequality, and most human beings are born to obey and not to rule. That they find happiness in and dignity not in self-determination, but in accepting the place in a fixed hierarchy. The According to him, the error of liberalism is thinking that submitting to social hierarchies to popular scrutiny somehow liberates people. For Evola, on the contrary, it actually destroys the very foundations that give life meaning. He says freedom can only exist when there are masters opposed to slaves, when there are proud leaders and followers that boldly and generously put their lives and destinies in their hands. So, yes, this is probably one of the more controversial points, but
No, no.
it is
Why
also
it is controversial? Why it is controversial? I would ask every liberal to first look at their hand, and they see five fingers or five fingers of different length. Why don't they use make it like equal length of all fingers? Okay, and start with their own hands as an equality statement.
of course, they would argue that you can do surgery and make the length of the fingers at the same length
I
or
would,
something,
yeah, I welcome that. I
or you
welcome
might
that.
want to chop the length of the extra fingers.
Yeah. Let them do. I have don't issue. Like they want equality, start with their own body, okay, and make all the body parts equal. Like your ears are equal, correct? So make same way make your
Right.
fingers in your leg and hand equal. Start with your body and show that okay, I am for equality.
Yeah, they should try
So,
using equally both of the sides of their brain.
Hmm.
वो भी
so
करना चाहिए
uh, all that aside, the jokes aside, the main reason
Yeah.
why uh, uh, he's not putting out this point without any reason. So we covered how desacralization is the true problem, right? He believes that
Hmm.
finding your own position in society, finding your own station in society, what they call it in English, right? That is very important. And these traditional hierarchies, these traditional structures, even if they were hierarchical, even if they were unequal, they gave people meaning in their lives, and they gave people, you can say, authorities that they can look up to, or even or even guide, if they were the ones who were authoritarian enough, or you can say a good enough authority. Yeah.
Mhm.
Rishi, any points on that?
Yeah, so I think what you're hinting at, like the different social status that were created, they also constituted authority in themselves, right? Um Towards others. It's not like there is only one kind of authority. There are many kinds of authorities if we see it in a broader scale. Because the different set of uh, professions or different set of communities which were created out of it, and the expertise that would be created eventually in those
Yes.
silos, they will then have a authority over others when they are trying to engage with them.
Yeah. I have an
So I
example for
think that
this.
was something to was.
So,
Yeah, yeah,
so
please.
the merchant. So imagine a merchant as one of the castes, right? The merchant would actually
Mm-hmm.
know how to use money much better than any of the others. You give a merchant to you can say a spiritual person, right? He will really not know what to
Mm-hmm.
do with it. He will not be productive with it. Or you give it to maybe a warrior. Even the warrior would probably use it for material purposes and waste it away. The merchant, on the other hand, he will truly know how to invest it for his own betterment, maybe for his community's betterment, and so on.
Mm.
He is the
Indeed.
authority on
I
how to
think,
use money. So your point comes there.
yeah, so I think that's what he was trying to hint at, Evola. Maybe you can elaborate on that. Like, was he doing that? Was he saying this
Yes.
at the end of the day when he
No,
was referring to
uh,
hierarchy?
I don't think he mentioned your point. Your point is kind
Hmm.
of uh, he didn't directly mention it, but we can derive it from him.
Okay, okay, okay. Well, I think what he
Yeah.
was referring to was a sort was a kind of arrangement where uh, mm, it's like a building. What he was referring to, right? Like a building which has different floors, and those floors do not get to change themselves at all, but they stay in their own lane, and that actually stabilizes the whole society. Was that the thing that he was referring to? If we can
Yeah.
make an analogy out of it.
Basically, like I was saying earlier, right, that his whole point is that that meaning which is lost, that meaning he wants is uh, he believes that this hierarchy, this social station which you have in that hierarchy, that gives you the meaning which you lose. You all got it right.
Hmm. True,
That is
true, true,
his
true.
Rishi,
whole shtick.
yeah, Rishi and Niner. So we have a special guest joined us. Namaste.
Namaste.
Namaste, founder of
Uh,
creativity.
you need to unmute yourself. I think I don't know who has joined. Okay, I'll remove him. Okay, go ahead. Go ahead.
Yes. Just a second. Yeah, we can move on to the next slide then, because I think we covered
Absolutely.
all the points on that. So the next point comes on anti-egalitarianism, and the rejection of universal humanity. This is building upon the same slide previously.
Okay, hold on, just hold on. Yeah,
Yes.
Didi, you can speak now.
Yeah, so actually, I would just like to add a little bit of a point to take a point from Aldous Huxley's A Brave New World. He says that, you eventually have a species that only has a sense of present and no connection to the past. That you understand. So I feel like what we are discussing, I mean, I joined in very late today, so I don't know really what you're discussing. But what it seems to me is this, unlike Indic philosophies, where you have a notion that this nature, this kainat, this universe, this earth itself is divine, itself is a form of divinity. In alternative philosophies, you have a notion that there is a God that owns that nature, and that God has somehow given you the power of attorney as rights on this nature. So this nature is no longer divine to you. As you said, this nature is just dead matter. It's like you don't have the soul to understand the idea of this nature. In addition to that, what these philosophies, which is the natural culmination of which is wokeism today, does is it gives you a sense of narcissism, a narcissistic, over bloated self of your a sense of your own self, thinking that you are the only one, you're the only generation or the only time that, or in the last 500 years, is the only time when humanity has created something. Of course, these notions have been pushed a little too far, and they have been pushed on the basis of the idea that the entire universe was created 6,000 years ago, and that, I mean, again, it's again presentism, this idea of presentism. There's nothing in the past, or nothing in the ancient past. Rather, in the past, of course, you have a historic past which you can prove. 2000 years, 1500 years, these milestones
Yes.
exist. But the ancient past, people were like morons, they were tree dwellers, and that they could not have had any philosophy. uh, that the brain sizes today are significantly higher. uh, they might not have had exactly the same technology as you, but they had their own technology. They had their own philosophy. You think of the Aztecs. You go to, if you ever go to Mexico, if you don't have to go to Mexico, you just look at the pictures on the internet. You look at the Aztecs. These people were a Stone Age civilization that never progressed beyond the stone. But look at the buildings they constructed. So, to the Western historians who have an obsession with civilization is equal to buildings, I mean, even after having seen those buildings, if they look at the South Americans and the Central Americans as um, unsophisticated, uncivilized people, um, it's this sense of narcissism that is inbuilt into their philosophy, that has a separate God, and that has given them the rights of attorney. Which is why, to them, no country, no civilization can ever become a mother. It can become a concubine. It cannot become a mother. You look at the Kushan dynasty. The Kushan dynasty is like post Christ. It's not post Christ. It's like right before Christ was born to like 300, 400 years after Christ. And if you are very honest about it, it's an Sino-Indian dynasty. It's not exactly an Indian dynasty. It's a Sino-Indian dynasty. Okay, I mean, I'm pretty sure they were also invaders, this, that, etc. But did they destroy our civilization? No. Wherever these people went, they, of course, they made some changes, but by and large, it was integration. Nobody in None of these people from the ancient world believed in absolute and abject destruction of civilization. It is suddenly this schism comes in, which is basically a two nation theory schism. That it's like, the two nation theory we think is 1947. No, it's like 2000. Around 2000 years old. That you belong to this cult, or you're out. You're a part of this cultish nation. You're a part of this cult of idiocy, or you're out. And then is a person. There's one person and a cult from some very dry place in the world. They double down on this. You are a part of this cult, or you're out. Or you're out as in you're out of your own breath, and you're out of your civilization is out. So these two, particularly these two philosophies that have spread across the world, they have spread because they've cultivated within themselves a sense of narcissism. And today's wokeism is a natural culmination of that narcissism. And that's all I have to say.
Although although that narcissism, I would say, was also present in Roman world as well. Like one gets to read texts by Julius Caesar, they'll know how bigoted and how genocidal, if I could use that word. It's unparliamentary, but still, how genocidal he was against Gauls and the Celts. We get to see that sort of attitude as well over there. Even in case of Alexander as well, we see that how he treated the Persians, how he destroyed their capital cities and so on out of revenge and all those reasons. We get to see those things. Although, yeah, there are counter examples as well. So Indo Greeks became Indianized, as we see. And in case of Kushan as well, we see they get Indianized. After all, son of Kanishka's name was Vasudeva at the end of the day. But yeah, uh, Didi, your conclusions are correct. Yeah. Ninar, Dada, if you could.
Yeah, I think no, I think it's very aptly said. That's why I invited Didi, because she had very valid and very interesting points, which actually adds like validation to our arguments. Yeah, continue, Dina.
Yes. So I'll continue with this presentation. So we were
Hmm.
discussing the concept of anti-egalitarianism, and universal humanity. That is basically continuing the idea from the last slide. So here, building on his defense of hierarchy earlier, Evola launches a frontal assault on the core premise of liberal thought that all humans share a common nature and equal dignity. He traces this idea to what he calls Christianity's slave morality. That is actually what he calls it. But its secular expressions are even more dangerous because they're harder to detect, according to him. Liberalism, Evola argues, conceives that human beings as individual bearers of rights who can define their own good. But this presupposes that human beings, they all are fundamentally the same, that anyone has the potential to be anyone, all share equal capacity for reason and self governance. Evola insists that this is empirically false, that he can prove this by looking at them, that he can prove this by actually observing how humans function, and that this um this premise that all human beings are all equal, this is actually spiritually catastrophic. Why this is spiritually catastrophic is that because people are fundamentally unequal in their capacities, and we are not giving that due in our considerations, and that political orders should reflect this inequality rather than deny it. In particular, he is very horrified by the American experiment. So this is an interesting observation we can perhaps comment about, that he writes with disdain about a place where anyone can be anyone who he wants to be. Each person can presume to possess the potential of everyone else. In such a society, the terms superior and inferior lose their meaning, which for Evola represents the collapse of all meaningful distinction. When everything is permitted and nothing is sacred, when all hierarchies are questioned and all authorities must justify themselves, you don't get liberation. Or he says that the only thing you get out of such a system is chaos. So Evola's criticism, it's it's not more sorry, it's more than just mere policy disagreements. He's saying that the core principle of liberalism itself, that authority flows from below to above, from the consent of the governed, or that itself is wrong. And he believes that the sacred order is inverted by it. According to him, tradition, or the traditional way of life, it insists that the authority, it must come from above, from a transcendent source. The moment you make legitimacy depend on popular will, like in a democracy, you've already conceded the entire metaphysical game to the, you can say, degenerate forces, according to him. So yeah, that was the point of this slide. Any thoughts on this, Bhupendra?
No, I think correct. I put forward my point that this inherent utopia of equality and correct the tribal instincts or the human instincts to actually preserve their own objective existence, and this utopian ideals of equality in all terms, in all aspects. That is something which is, and let me go back again to literature. So you had Isaac Asimov, correct? So in one of the novels I read and listened, correct, that was The Naked Sun. There is a novel by Isaac Asimov from the Bailey universe. Okay, so in the
Yes.
Naked Sun novel, correct, he would go to he and the robot detective Oliver, okay, R. Oliver. They would go to a planet, name I'm forgetting. So in that planet, very peculiarly, that planet will have only 20,000 people, and those planet the size of Earth, and there would be only 20,000 people. Number might be here and there, and that people will be given a specific estate, and one person would inherit the whole estate. So there, everybody would be given all the facilities. Like in terms of equality, every individual in that planet. So there would be like 20 million robots for 20,000 people. So all the work would be done by the robots, and the humans would be 20,000, and they cannot reproduce on their own. They need a license to produce a baby, and that, even that baby which is born is a kind of a mechanical effort to keep the population at 20,000, not less, not more. So at specific time, and that is also a kind of a mechanical approach, and there would be no personal connection between two individuals. Every individual would be doing their work and just be engrossed in their own tasks. So there is no connection, and there would be a kind of a phobia. There would be, in the novel, there's a phobia of meeting somebody face to face. So they have a term called view. So they would always view each other over a screen, a kind of a screen, visible screen, where they can like video call. So that's very interesting term, correct? This utopian idea of everybody being given all the necessary things required, and that's, I don't know, like where it comes from. Correct? In our philosophies as well, correct? We say that like people should have all the necessary things required. But at the end of the day, a purohit is a different kind of person from a what do we say, a warrior. Okay, a person who
Yes.
is doing vaishya work, he is different, correct? His skill sets are different. So how can what vaishya does, okay, vaishya, what vaishya has, does the same thing is required to be had for a brahman or for a purohit or for a artisan? And even let's talk about even more, correct? Let's people who take sannyasi, correct? A sannyasi has
Yes.
only one cloth and he begs for food, correct? So is he a miserable person because he only has two pair of clothes, and he has to beg for his food? So what kind of equality we are talking about? Correct? Is there no individual agency? I, as a human being, when I am young, I will be wanting a different kind of thing. When I am in my 30s, in my 40s, I want a different thing. So, how does equality mean that put a standard and this is something you need to, this is the formula of your good life? Why it needs to be thrust upon every individual when scientifically every human DNA is different? Correct? Every individual has a different kind of DNA. That's why you are able to find out that who has, in correct, in every detective novel, correct, in crime cinema novel, correct, you will see the DNA test which will say, okay, okay, this person has done the act of bad thing. How? Because the DNA test. So even every individual human is different. How you want the same different individuals to have same kind of things that they need to have a good life? Even scientifically, it is doesn't make any sense. And if you just think about, rather than be foolish in your things.
Yes, I agree with you then.
Rishi.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Also, this would be, I guess, a submission, a small submission from me.
Hmm.
Given our education in modern era, while I was like listening to Nainer, even I was feeling a bit uneasy while listening to Evola's remarks on anti-egalitarianism. But at the end of the day, somehow we have to face this dilemma as well, that even if we say people are equal, at the end, when we see in society, especially in modern, even in first world countries as well, we see a stark difference between the haves and the have nots section of societies. And at that time, also we see that a person's value is based upon the utility that he produces, like what kind of product can he put out at the end of the day. Like someone is a YouTube content maker, or someone is a blue collar worker or white collar uh, worker as well. uh, there is a kind of hierarchy built at that time, in the kind of behavior that a normal people will have with those separate sections of society. So after all of this, even then, if we pretend to say about, okay, everyone has equal value and everybody has equal set of dignity, this would be hypocrisy. This would be double standard, because we preach something but we act in a very different way. I don't know. It boggles me, but what can I say?
No, no, correct. Take a very our life's example, our life lived experiences. Correct. A mother, correct. A mother who like makes food for the child and feeds with her hand. Correct. That kind of happiness, correct. That kind of satisfaction, that kind of emancipation. Okay. Now, take an example. A father, correct. He goes to work. Okay, earns money and tries to give a better life to the wife and the child. Just take an example, correct. The happiness of the father is a different kind of happiness, correct. Happiness of a mother is a different kind of happiness. So now, what do you think that okay, now father should come, should quit his work and feed the child, and the father would be as happy as the mother? What kind of absurd
Hmm.
arguments are you talking about? Why I have to be happy the same thing that you would be happy? Why all the world, every human being in this world needs to be happy because somebody has said this is one thing which makes you happy? I can't choose my happiness.
True. It's something very instinctive. It's not out of choice at all. It's not a rational decision. It's a very
Yeah,
like it's emotional.
there are some aspect of it which at which we are equal. My right to live a dignified life can be as equal as yours, but everything cannot be equal.
Yeah.
And even I can choose, correct. So again, correct. If you go back to Minority Report, correct, the movie Minority Report, which is based on a novel or a story by Philip K Dick. And even correct, in Brave New World, correct, in the Brave New World, the I think who was the character who was the savage, correct. Savage would say, I want to choose that I want to be unhappy. I don't want this idealistic life. I want to feel pain. But the world state says no, 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 no. You cannot be unhappy. You have to be happy.
Right.
So aren't we have the individual agency? Yeah, it doesn't mean that you go and harm people, but at some level of time, at some level, we have something in common, but we have something which is not common.
So
So why
what you
don't we
mean is
just
that
agree?
by
Go ahead, go
artificially
ahead.
pursuing an equality, we are also
Hmm.
kind of limiting the full experience of us experiencing the full depth of life, whether the
Yeah,
poverty or the riches.
I'll give you one more example, which is very dear, which is in front of us. Correct. You have eyes, I have eyes. Correct. You have two eyes, I have two eyes.
Yeah.
But your vision might be different from mine. By genetically, you and I have two sets of eyes. We are common, but your eyes sight might be better than my eyesight. So what should I do? You should harm your eyes and make it worse so that I and you will be equal. What kind of equality we are talking about?
Yes, makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, go
Also,
ahead.
for audience, what I was saying about dignity, it was on the expression that people make towards others. So basically, we agree that everyone has uh, the right to have same kind of dignified life, but in practical life, it's a very different case. We do not act in such a way. We do not act dignified towards a homeless person. We act very much dignified towards a politician in front of us. So that was something which I was trying to hint at, even for the liberal society, because they are the ones who larp about dignity much more than the kind Evola types represent. Yeah, yeah, Nina, you can go on. I think we have a lot to cover.
Yes, yes. So, moving on to the next topic, we have the doctrine of two natures. This is also another aspect of the previous point itself we're discussing about equality and also about desacralization. Here, Evola brings a kind of dualistic metaphysics into his worldview. According to him, the man of tradition experiences reality through what Evola calls the doctrine of two natures. He values the absolute over the contingent, the invisible over the visible, the sacred over the profane, and the being over becoming. These aren't just preferences, they represent actually two opposed cosmic principles. Let me repeat the thing for all the viewers. According to Evola, the man of tradition experiences reality through what Evola calls the doctrine of two natures. He values the absolute over the contingent, the invisible over the visible, the sacred over the profane, and being over becoming. So, yes, moving on. On one side is the spiritual masculine solar principle associated with transcendence, order, hierarchy, permanence, importantly, and form. On the other side, for Evola, is the material feminine lunar principle associated with immanence, chaos, equality, change, and matter. According to him, traditional civilizations were organized around the dominance of spirit over matter. The spiritual principle gave form to material chaos, imposing order on disorder, creating stable hierarchies that reflected eternal truths. So, where does modernity fit into this? Modernity, according to him, it would represent the matter's revolt against everything that was spiritual. It is the triumph of the lower against the higher, of the material over the transcendent, over the of the chaotic, of the entropy over the ordered world. Everything that liberalism actually celebrates. For example, we have equal rights, then individual autonomy, the freedom to choose anything, material progress, changing social arrangements according to free will. According to Evola, he sees these as symptoms of matter or the materials side of things, throwing off the rightful dominance of the spiritual world. Critically, Evola claims this dualism isn't argued philosophically, but perceived directly by those with the proper spiritual disposition. Quote unquote, he calls it the demon of dialectics, cannot demonstrate truths visible only to an elect few. This makes his system conveniently unfalsifiable. If you don't see the doctrine of two natures, it's because you lack the spiritual capacity to perceive it. Those who do see it recognize themselves as natural aristocrats. According to him, that is meant to impose form on the chaos around them. So at the end, yeah, basically he thinks that the only a select few can see what he can see in this about how the material is trying to throw off the spiritual world. And Matthew Rose, the author of the book from which we are actually reading, he actually sees this as an excuse, though we can kind of take it seriously as well if because Evola is serious about it in the end.
Hmm, indeed. I mean, he came from a very, like his experience with modernism and violence, and we have to take those into account. Like, why should we
Absolutely.
dismiss his experiences at all?
So here comes a little bit a more for his controversial side to me.
Hmm.
He talks about a spiritual aristocracy and the order in capitals. So here he talks about how those superior individuals we mentioned earlier who are able to actually distinguish, or you can say in a way they have the viveka to actually see between how the material matter is taking over the spiritual matters. So Evola, he brings about the question, so who are these spiritual superior individuals and how do they achieve their status? Evola, he envisions an elite order of men who, through initiation and self mastery, attain what he calls the unconditioned. The unconditioned, it is a state of superiority over ordinary human concerns and needs. These won't be political leaders in the convention sense. They'd actually be spiritual warriors who have transcended normal human weakness. This is kind of an attempt to the solution he's trying to bring to his all his assessments. I found this less like appropriate, but yeah, I'll continue on it. He called this the real right, not a political party, but more like a secret society of fraternal order. They would be differentiated men who feel they don't inwardly belong in liberal societies. Men, quote unquote, ready for action and capable of resisting every compromise with liberalism. Vola imagined them as having undergone a kind of spiritual initiation that separates them permanently from the masses. This is where the actual controversy comes in. The model he had in mind for this was actually the SS. So SS, as everybody knows, was the Hitler's personal, um, whatever you want to call it, their order or whatever.
Hmm.
And
Yeah,
he
Gestapo,
the
saw it.
right?
secret police, Gestapo. Right? Gestapo,
Correct.
correct?
Yeah. Gestapo is, I think, Italian, but
Ah,
his idea was of
okay.
SS, so Hitler. But yeah, it's similar. He
Hmm.
actually thought that these would be the perfect elites. That was his kind of solution. But he even has a famous phrase on this. I have noted it down here. The presence of superior individuals bestows on a multitude of meaning, the justification they previously lacked. Ordinary people, the masses, have no inherent meaning or purpose. Meaning comes from above, from those who achieve self mastery. The multitude need these superior individuals to give their lives structure and significance. Without spiritual aristocracy, society collapses into meaningless chaos. So, what I feel is, um, so far, till maybe the sixth point, he got it right. When it came to solutions, he kind of really veered off in a really strange, weird direction. And understandably so,
True.
because he probably wanted to come to a solution right away, also. So, he just projected his own visions of um, the noble aristocracy, Aryans, so called, onto the SS and other organizations. But of course, they failed in the end.
completely.
So, Rishi, any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, this sort of solution is so disastrous, in fact, because he had this point, right? Such a leader, like what he says, a leader apparently cannot directly appeal to the masses. That was apparently the greatest mistake of another authoritarian ideology that which belonged to Italy. So he says that instead they must inspire submission through a lofty contempt for democratic norms and popular tastes. The presence of superior individual bestows, as you said, that's the quotation which you gave.
Yeah.
I mean, after all, if you do
This
not
is
have any
yeah,
appeal from the masses, then how can you sustain yourself at all? I mean, who will you have the help of at the end of the day? Because after all, you need to have consensus of the ruled, or else whom will you rule over? Nobody. Ashes.
I think what happened here, personally, my opinion, is he was trying to project his ideas into the world around him. And see solutions where they were, say, probably the SS was not even functioning with him in mind. He was working on its own, but he kind of desperate in the world for, I guess, someone to support. He went and supported that, I suppose,
True. I
because it's
think
a very poor
that
justification as well. It's a very poor justification of
indeed,
supporting them.
exactly. Like to say that you will create a sort of secret society, that too on the image of a very dreaded organization which had a very bloody history, and that too without mass appeal. No, no, no. That ain't gonna work. Nobody is gonna accept it at the end of the day. Such at least after
Absolutely.
all, the elite or the leader has to have mass appeal. He has to have respect of the so-called ruled. If he doesn't have that, it's of no use. Of what value then is
That is
that
one
leader?
idea I also disagree with him, that uh,
Mhm.
this is kind of the history of empires, of kingdoms, and everything. That whenever they lose the mandate of the people, they kind of eventually do get kicked out in some way or the other.
Absolutely true. They do get kicked out because there is then the rise of new elite, right? That's the whole point of elite theory.
Yes.
You can talk about it. That the new elite comes who has the mass appeal, and then he mobilizes and creates the very cogent minority, but has a good support on ground, and then they can totally dismantle the existing elite and then get into the position.
Yes. Absolutely. So, moving on to the next slide.
Mhm.
Here we move on to a slightly different topic of his, but also an important one. So
Mhm.
it is called the organic state and the sacred empire. Here, we cover what would Evola's ideal political organization look like. According to him, he called it the organic state, that is a hierarchical community where each person occupies their proper station based on spiritual capacity, all ordered toward transcendent purposes rather than just pure material well-being. This would culminate in sacred empire where temporal power is completely subordinated to spiritual authority. So one key aspect here that one must note, that Evola mentions repeatedly is he insists that kingship and priesthood both must be united in a single office. This is probably not in line with our Hindu way of thinking. But yeah, he believes that this existed in ancient Rome, in the Holy Roman Empire, and so on. And he believes that the separation of church and state was actually an absolute catastrophe. And that spiritual and temporal authority must be actually one. And
Hmm.
uh, there is an on the next point there is actually a kind of what can we say? Um, Sorry. He kind of he is contrary to himself in the next point, where he mentions that such authority, where the spiritual and temporal is one, it shouldn't rely on force or even popular consent, and he believes that it's an incursion from a realm beyond life, and it would inspire obedience simply by the people being in awe of it. Evola calls this anagogic power, the ability to lead people from the lower order of reality to the higher. True authority draws people upward spiritually. It doesn't force or persuade, it elevates. This is, in fact, contrary to his own ideas of his support to the SS, as
Hmm.
we have seen earlier. That is kind of hilarious.
Indeed.
So, on this same line of thinking, Evola rejects both totalitarianism and populist dictatorship, insisting that his vision is different. But it's hard to see how his system differs from absolute rule by a spiritually elevated leader or order. So, yeah, this is an opinion of the author Matthew Rose, that all the institutions
Hmm.
and practices would provide absolute form amid changing material features, and this would still make it look like the dictatorship, according to him. What do you think about this?
So,
Hmm. Go
okay,
ahead,
this is a bit
Rishi, go
hard.
ahead.
No, this is a bit hard. Dada, if you have some comments, you can please
Yeah, I
share that.
am thinking because this is very. I think what we call correct that genomics was there, na? What was called
Hmm.
in which Aldous Huxley
Eugenics.
had had yeah, yeah, correct, yeah,
Eugenics. Yeah, yeah.
eugenics. So yeah, so eugenics, this again correct, this again comes from this utopian concept. Again, the eugenics is something which is again it's rooted in this idea of utopia, of like these people are not as good looking, as tall physically, okay, as not as intellectual as we are, so they are no good to us as a human society, so they should be eliminated. But in our dharmic philosophy, in our dharmic panth, correct, you had Ashtavakra, the famous saint, right? The famous philosopher, Ashtavakra, who was
Yes.
intellectually a giant, but like his name is Ashtavakra, means he had eight kind of like deformities. But he was a great intellectual, correct? Yeah, the Ashtavakra Gita is considered as a pinnacle of Advaitism. I not exactly that word, but so again, in terms of capacity, in terms of capability, in terms of talent, correct, it doesn't, you don't have to be an ideal looking person with blue eyes, a straight nose, a chin, white skin, all these things. Only then you will have the capacity. A person who looks like Ashtavakra can have the highest intellectual capacity to actually envision God. So again, we see the difference where we accept that one standard doesn't fit all. A person can be inferior looking in terms of physically, but he can have a brain as great and as best as Ashtavakra. So again, this concept of utopia, accepting nature, this that is not there with the modern society. That we accept that we are different, okay, and live with it. That's how we have been. Yes.
Yeah, even I agree with it.
Okay, let's continue.
All right. So the next point, I think this is probably coming closer to the end of um his whole ideology, I guess. It's about riding the tiger. He has a whole book written
Uh,
on this.
and
It's about
Niner,
active
Niner,
nihilism. Yes.
one more thing. Niner, how many slides we have?
Ah, we have till 12.
No. Okay, number two. Because only we have
1, 2,
two or three
3,
slides to do.
4,
Correct.
5. Ah,
Five
total
slides
5.
left. Correct.
5, but
Five are left.
points only 3. Points only
Okay,
3.
then we can. Okay, then we can finish this today itself.
Yeah, I'll go through it quickly. I'll not.
Mm-hmm.
Now it's not so many important points. The important ones are covered already.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So about the riding the tiger, this is called active nihilism. Here is where Evola addresses the practical questions. Given that we're in Kali Yuga and tradition seems impossible to restore through normal means, so what do people who actually want to understand tradition do? So according to him, we must ride the tiger, or we must be actively nihilist. Uh, the this is in contrary to his guru's view. His guru was Rene Guénon, as people might know, who believed that they must kind of passively accept everything. Evola was against that. He believed that you don't passively accept it. Rather than that, Evola believed that you kind of live in a kind of disengagement with the modern world, and as much as you can, you achieve your the highest level as an individual you can, even being surrounded by others whom may not agree with you. This is where he even contemplates about the left hand path, that is using normally forbidden acts, even destructive activity, when undertaken with mature spiritual orientation. According to him, if modernity represents a negation of tradition, perhaps the negation of the negation would be the formative action that opens space for tradition's return. He hinted it might be better to contribute to the fall of that which is already wavering, so accelerating liberalism's demise. So this is where his ideology also becomes dangerous, as we see earlier. Basically, trying to be the negation of the negation, right? So he, this is where he also becomes associated with terrorism. That
Hmm.
in order to bring down the modern world, we must even actively go against it. So yeah, that was
Yeah,
the
I
point of
believe.
this.
Uh, yes. So people have heard of the incident of Unibomber. How many people have know about the Unibomber incident in USA?
Unibomber.
Yeah. So there was an individual. So actually, what we are saying, correct? This negation of negation principle. Okay. Here it is not negation;
Huh.
it's actually destruction. So
Yes,
here
yes.
negation of negation means, I mean, here he is saying, uh, let it rot, let it die,
No, no, he's saying
let it rot.
don't just
Mhm.
let it rot. You actively participate to make it rot. And that is
Yeah,
the kind of person.
but again, is that an active participation? See, like,
Hmm.
how do you do that? Like, what is
Active,
the
active.
framework?
Yes, yes.
Correct. So
To,
again,
he's
in
saying
this,
no to do normally forbidden acts, including destructive activity, which includes violence
exactly.
and
Hmm.
includes pity, crime, and all that.
Let me actually open the page. So this is very
Huh.
interesting. There is a modern parlance to this. So I think alt history also did a podcast on this podcast. Is monologue.
Okay, you find that point.
By the
I'll
way,
cover the next one.
No, I already have
yeah.
it. Hold on. I just
Okay, okay.
We already have it. Let me just open it. I'll open Wikipedia because there are quickly we don't get that source. But anyway, uh, so if you see here, correct? Ted Kaczynski. Ted Kaczynski was a brilliant student. Like he was a genius of a kind.
Oh, this guy. Yes,
And
yes.
okay, and alt history made a video of an hour long monologue on this. He he had a similar kind of thought process, not exactly the same, but he had actually planted explosive devices which actually exploded and killed a few people. And he used to actually live in a forest alone.
Ah,
So he was a kind of a against this modernity, and he was trying to actively
okay.
destroy the modern civilization. So people who are wanting like to know more about this, you can go to Alt History channel and you will find the Unabomber thing. So whatever Ebola is saying, correct, this person has actually emulated this, not exactly, but in its philosophical way, where he had actually planted, and he was a
Seems to
brilliant
be so.
person.
Yes.
He was a brilliant person, correct, academically and otherwise, and a very high IQ. Actually, he would not have been caught. They know he was not caught. So, and what happened that he actually uh, told his brother what he was doing. So by his brother told the authorities, the police people, that he is my brother and he is there. So only then he was caught. Or else, if he did not tell anybody what he was doing, then he would never have been caught. He was that brilliant. But in terms of philosophy, in terms of his understanding of society, it's very very similar to what Ebola had taught, like thought of it.
Yeah, seems to be so.
So
Great. Evola
that's what.
found
Dada, can you
someone did
put
follow
our
Evola.
presentation back on the screen?
Yeah, I
Ah,
put it here.
okay, okay. Yeah. So the next point we have is on Christianity. So he talks about as we have already talked about egalitarianism and how he Evola views faults in it and so on. He before we get to Evola's utopian vision, how society must be, we need to actually understand his critique of Christianity, which is quite devastating because for him, Christianity is actually the source of modernity's problems and not a solution to them. That is, Christianity can't be the anti-modern solution, basically. Evola's cardinal criticism is that Christianity it committed the original sin, separating spiritual and temporal power. He says that it divided priestly and civil offices, created two authorities instead of one. And for Evola, this is actually the most insidious idea in human history, quote unquote. By dividing what should be perfectly united, Christianity created social schizophrenia where no one authority possesses power over all human life. So this is a maybe contentious to us, but he says that he claimed that every authentic traditional society, Egyptian, Roman, Persian, Hindu, united kingship and priesthood in a single office. The pharaoh was both political ruler and divine representative. Roman emperor was both imperator and pontifex maximus, that is their spiritual authority. But he says Christianity broke this unity, preventing state from claiming sacral authority. And the result was centuries of conflict between popes and emperors and church and state, between all kinds of religious and well, you can say warrior authority. He also sees more problems with Christianity. So one thing was that Christianity is a religion open to all people, regardless of background. So he sees that this universalism eroded the actual hierarchy that was in society. Since everyone can potentially join the church, everyone is equal before God, and everyone has a soul of equal dignity. And he argues that this is incompatible with the aristocratic ethos tradition requires. Moreover, there is also the belief in a transcendent God that is to survive that humans are to be servile before God and too rebellious against human authorities. So this dualistic mythology that people began questioning earthly power, but they don't question divine power. That result uh, brings us to liberal modernity. This is how he believes Christianity is the actual, uh, originator of the idea of liberal modernity. Going further ahead, we come to the final point. So we have covered everything Evola actually worked on and what he wrote on everything. What was his actual end worldview? What did he want to see the world as? So Evola, so here what we need to understand is that his utopianism is very unique. It's a kind of utopianism that inverts everything we normally associate with utopianism. So normally when we think of utopians, we think of oh, the world is completely in peace. There is no violence, no, you can say, no inequality. Everybody is loving each other and everybody is free and so on. But Evola was not concerned with any of this. The author of this book, right, Matthew Rose, he says perfectly. I think his quotation is really good with this. Evola dreamed of a world of absolutely fixed and certain meanings, where human identities in all their forms bore the indelible chrism of sacred destiny, a world saturated with meaning so thick, so absolute, and so unchallengeable that they could create reflections of eternity and time. So what Evola wanted, it was actually ontological security. No questioning, no uncertainty, no anxiety about meanings in life. The identities that you're given at birth, that would be unchallengeable. Now, you cannot really change them in your life. Every activity that you are given, every activity that you choose to do even, that is charged with a lot of transcendent significance, because the consequences of that activity, or even the, you can say, the prerequisites for you to be able to do that authority, those have a lot of meaning. And every hierarchy would be sacred, every authority would be absolute. So after this, against a secular world of growing freedom and equality, Evola conjures a sacred world of unchanging order and inequality, where all authority is the thing that is absolute and every activity is holy. This is not like, say, Christianity or Islam, the religions basically, where he's hoping for, say even in Hinduism we hope for punya, or in Christianity they hope for heaven in the afterlife. He calls all those things as hallucinations. He believes that the holiness is experienced here and now in the cruelness and the, you can say, maybe the meaningfulness of daily life. He wanted to
Oh,
actually, yeah, so he actually wanted to charge suffering, hierarchy, domination, death itself with the highest spiritual meaning. So,
oh no.
uh, yeah, so at the end, his whole point is this is a world for those who experience modernity not as oppression but as spiritual dispossession, for those who fear irrelevance more than exploitation, for those who would rather have fixed meaning in a rigid hierarchy than freedom in an uncertain cosmos. That's what makes Evola's vision so psychologically powerful, even when it's actually technically horrifying because of how he implemented in say support for the SS and so on, right? So yeah,
Indeed, indeed.
that was all his 12 points on this. Any thoughts on that, Bhupendra or Rishi?
Yeah, I
Yeah,
think we
so
have. Go ahead, Rishi. Go ahead. Go ahead. I'll share it.
yeah, yeah. Okay, okay. So it's not surprising then, right, Ninar, that the recommendation he gave for an elite which is supposed to be built upon the image of SS, uh, it won't be a problem for him, because at the end, even despotism or cruelty, even there he seems to find some sort of spiritual meaning at the end. Uh,
Yeah.
which would, I think, even for a Hindu, it would be very hard to argue. Uh, they wouldn't see any spiritual meaning into it. They would see a meaning of adharma into it, in fact. But the, although he sees tradition within Hindu, quote unquote, but over here, I guess we will have some sort of departure, right?
Quite a few disagreements. Even I pointed out that one disagreement, right? That he believes that
Hmm.
even in our case, that kings were also divine authorities, but that is not exactly true, right?
Even
Yeah,
no, no, no.
indeed. I
Actually, not
mean,
even no, 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 no. Actually, it's factually wrong. Kings were not
Yeah, it's
divine
actually wrong.
authorities. Yeah, because kings drew, like they were like correct, correct Rama, correct. So in Thailand you have Rama 1, 2, 3, 4, correct. So they
Yeah.
took the name of Rama, okay, and they drew their power to rule from the divine authority of Rama himself. So like a representative of Rama. So I am here to rule on behalf of Rama. Like they are not divine authorities. They are drawing the authority from the higher
From
authority of,
above, correct. Yeah.
yeah,
So
from
yeah,
above.
these kind of things he didn't understand properly.
And one more thing, actually, the contradictions that earlier we were talking about, correct, with regard to, correct. So in, correct, when we had the concept of duality. So we also have, correct, Dvaita and Advaita, correct, non-dual and dual. So in the non-dual philosophy of Advaita, correct, it talks about Maya. So how do you, like, and that's a like basic question which is everybody asks, correct. So if I am the eternal consciousness, then what is the use of this body? So correct. So again, this concept of Maya comes in, that what you see
Yes.
is exist, what you see is exist as it is, okay, but this is not the ultimate existence. And one, there's the one talk by Mr. Swami Sarpananda, and he gave a very interesting, explanation, that when you watch a television, correct, you see water flowing in the screen, river is flowing, correct, but you can't touch the water, but you can see the water is flowing. So the water actually exists, correct. There is a river where the camera was there, and with the camera lens you can actually see in the television water is flowing, correct. But what you see in front of a television is a Maya, because you can't touch the water, but it exists in reality. So there are, like, existence can be, like, also explained as Maya, that they do exist, but this is not the ultimate existence as it is. So, like, it's a very complex topic, but just to give an example, the duality, how do we make sense of duality? That's one way of understanding
Yeah.
it.
completely. And to support you, Ninar, on the topic of we did not have what uh, Evola tried to convey of us, like saying there was a conjugation of spiritual and temporal authority altogether. Uh, so there is this book, right, of Jesai Deepak, the second book, India, Bharat, and Pakistan. So at first he quotes a Shruti passage, right, at the very beginning of his book, where he basically says, it's a verse from Shukla Yajurveda, where basically the being, like Brahman, when it created the whole of universe and whole of existence, uh, one after the other varnas that were being created, a varna could not uh, uphold the universe. So there was need for another, then another, and it went on and on. And at the end, that's where it ends. And I will just quote that verse. Yet Brahman could not scaffold the cosmos, as he was doubtful about controlling the ferocious Kshatra. He further created Dharma. This dharma is the controller of Kshatriya, hence there is nothing greater than dharma. End quote. So yeah, for us, it's basically a system where everyone has to help each other. It's not like uh, only the spiritual and the temporal have to be the elite. It's everyone who has to help each other in controlling in creating the whole of society. It cannot be a single dictator up there and dictating everyone as
Yes.
to how they should be
and
behaving and all.
then one more part very important, in our tradition, correct, our the kings were also philosophers. We forget that, like when the king or the yuvraj, correct, the king's son, who supposed to become the king after his father's death, or when father leaves his throne, the training of a king is that he needs to learn all the skills, including the skill of philosophy. Dasharath was a philosopher. So Dasharath was called a philosopher king. So king would actually be a very competent person because he would go through a rigorous training of being a
Yes.
kshatriya. He was a kshatriya. He was also was a philosopher. Correct. He also learned shastras. So king was not a dictator in our dharmic traditions. King was a person who knew shastras, who knew shastras, and also was a philosopher. So he was in a position to actually, because he had the knowledge to actually guide the society, because he had the inherent skills, learned skills, which was given to him. You cannot expect a common folk, a farmer, to actually come and become a king because he has not gone through the training of being a king. So king does not mean that because he's a son of the king, he becomes king. The Yuvraj becomes a king because he has gone through a training process of becoming how to govern. That also is missing in our talks, and the way the Western people see as kings. Correct? Normally, what we know
Yes.
that because in ancient times, the throne was passed on from one to another because he was only a son. A son, a king's son becomes king. That's only we are taught. We are not taught that how they were trained to become kings.
And often they would select between brothers, which of the brothers would
Exactly.
become king.
So the most suitable, the most knowledgeable, the most brave would become the king.
Yes.
Indeed. So, Ninar, I wanted to ask you, was he confusing the concept of Rajarshi of ours in saying that there is this conjugation of spiritual and temporal authority, even in Hindu
Oh
society,
no, I
as far
understood
as
where
king
he's
is
coming
concerned?
from actually. You know about how
Okay.
Buddhism glorifies Kshatriyas far more than Hinduism, in a sense.
Oh,
That is where he's actually coming from.
okay. Oh, okay, okay. Now I get it, of course.
Yeah. So, um, as an outro, as a reflection on all we have studied, we can always, or I would urge the viewers to think about these following questions here about to to kind of just reflect on what we learned on Ebola in general. And yeah, so we have actually journeyed through one of the most systematically anti-modern philosophies ever. Because as far as I know, nobody gives a more fuller expression of what it means to reject everything modern than Evola. So what is significant is that whether it's not whether his ideas are correct or not. Oftentimes, as we have seen, his historical claims are fabricated, or his metaphysics is not really accurate or anything, and the political implications of what he wants are also kind of very problematic and genuinely dangerous. But what he points out is significant because that kind of meaninglessness, that everything dissolving down to being about material confirms and nominal freedoms, that is truly empty. and without any purpose. That losing fixed roles in societies and those stable hierarchies, even if they felt, um, even if they felt like they were not giving the freedom, absolute freedom, those hierarchies still have a meaning, and they do give an identity and purpose to people. They do also reduce anxiety about the position, the station of one's life. At the end of the book, at the end of the section, Matthew Rose, he poses quite an interesting question. So, can we understand Evola without being persuaded by him? Can we see what problems he's responding to? The problems that we mentioned, that genuine loss of meaning, the anxiety of freedom, the burden of creating your own values without accept. Can we accept these without accepting his what else can I say about strange solutions? Because his solutions aren't really feasible or anything truly living up to his own critiques. So Evola, in the end, he represents a test case for liberal societies. Can we acknowledge that some people genuinely experience liberal modernity as a spiritual death? Can we understand why someone might prefer this certainty of hierarchy to the anxiety of freedom? We must really see that the danger at the end, it's not that everyone will become Evolian or something. It's that when liberal societies, when they fail to address this kind of spiritual hunger that Ebola is actually expressing, we can actually see the consequences in them basically idealizing organizations like the SS or the Gestapo. That is where the end road is. So yeah, that is how we should truly approach Ebola. That is what I believe. And finally, few just some food for thought as to why Ebola might or might not resonate with Hindus. So he has actually drawn on several Hindu concepts, the Kali Yuga. He also brings up the caste system. He brings up Bhagavad Gita. I have seen he actually quotes it a couple of times, and the idea of dharma and the Kshatriyas in particular. And he also presents this as part of his universal tradition, arguing that ancient Hinduism exemplified the sacred order that he wanted to restore. Many of us Hindus, we actually do feel that modern India, we have kind of lost something essential from our ancient civilization. Uh, we don't see many of these things, even say the caste system. It is not inherently oppression, but even even while acknowledging that it has not perfect functioned perfectly, it did function as a divine organization in ancient times. And to those who understand dharma as fixed social duties rather than individual ethics, it does look like Evola speaks our language. There's also the anti-colonial dimension. Evola rejecting Western modernity and and looking to Eastern traditions, that also inspires some feeling of confidence within us. That can also be kind of validating, but we must also be aware of Evola's directions because we have seen what consequences his line of thinking actually go towards. But what else? So
Yeah,
yeah, I
and
think
we have with us, yeah, we have with us Bijidda has joined us. Namaste, Bijidda.
Namaste, namaste. What a
Namaste
topic.
Vijita.
Namaste.
Amazing. Nainer has completely bamboozled everyone.
By the way, I don't know.
Amazing.
I don't want to brag about my writing, but when I was talking about, if you remember Rishi and Nina,
Yes.
Yeah.
genocide of natural conventions, and then we
Yeah, yeah.
discussed actually meaning, creativity, right?
Yep.
I mean, this is so similar, yeah. See, now what I have to do. So basically, I wrote my like two para introduction, and then I went for this whole natural convention, but you guys have talked about the primordial convention, right? Primordial tradition. I will include this part, yeah, the that initial part, ki how it is actually
Definitely, you
entangled
should do
with
that.
nature and natural cycle and all these things. Um,
Yeah.
but I have a few, I think, different take.
Hmm.
For example, one was that I think about the caste, right? So there was this thing जहाँ पे बोल रहा है कि there is this inherent, what was that? It's like some are actually bound to obey order, something
Hmm,
like
hmm,
that,
hmm, hmm.
right?
Let
Yeah,
me
yeah, yeah,
just
yeah.
move
Yes,
back
yes.
the slides. Maybe is it this one or no? No,
Some of them are
maybe
bound
earlier.
to obey order and some are there to rule,
Ah, this one. This
right?
quote
I
you're
think यहाँ
probably
पे ये जो
mentioning.
बंदा है ये थोड़ा फिर अलग हो गया, because मतलब in my opinion, if you, so you have to really go like really slowly here and should not jump, which I think this guy Evola did. So first you are talking about meaning and syncing the meaning with the natural convention, tradition, morality, quote unquote, right? And then obviously when you need to find meaning, because obviously it is going to take you away from meaninglessness, nothingness, right? I mean, from nothingness or meaninglessness to creation of meaning, it is a 0 to 1 process, and the process is very non-linear. But let's say you are trying to create meaning, and obviously in search of meaning you are doing a lot of other things like cluster formation, which is like society, for example. Now in society, if you think कि ठीक है यार, caste जो है, because quote unquote some are bound to obey and some are bound to rule, then I mean we have to create the caste that way. No, in my view, जो वर्ण व्यवस्था फॉर एग्जाम्पल हमारा जो था, वहां पे it was also a search of meaning for various people. इट्स
Yes,
नॉट लाइक कि ठीक है चार चार बड़े बड़े वर्ण बोलते थे, कोई युद्ध लड़ता है, कोई शास्त्र पढ़ाता है, कोई अपना शिल्पकला या अपना बिजनेस करता है, और कोई सेवा करता है ना। यहाँ पे अगर तुम देखो, someone is finding meaning in fighting war, someone is finding meaning in writing, right, in creating knowledge, someone is finding meaning in chisels, and someone is finding meaning in being sympathetic and being bringing empathy to the society with seva. So it's not like ki someone is bound to obey, that's why they are belonging to a specific varna or so. No, I mean, or even like inside, let's say, Vaishya, inside Vaishya you have like so many different artisans, so many different, let's say, businessmen, right? All these communities are there. um
Hmm.
and then for example if you consider Brahman, wahan pe pujari, you have the acharya, you have guru, you have rishi, you have muni, all these people, right? So it's not like these were like rigid thing which were formed to um, rule one over the other. Maybe later in some smriti things got subverted, but you can see like each of these professions, so to say, if you can call it professions, right? I mean, they were founded probably in search of meaning, because someone liked to create, I don't know, some murti, some mandir, they went some
yes,
way. Someone wanted to teach, they went the other way. So this is just the search of meaning. And someone created music, for example. ठीक है, someone was रथी, कि जो रथ चलाता था, राइट? तो यहाँ पे ये जो बंदा बोल रहा है कि यहाँ पे फिर से वो अब्राहमिज्म डाल रहा है, ये फिर से वो गलती कर रहा है अपना, जो ये बोला जो बंदा है। नहीं यार, इट्स नॉट बिकॉज ऑफ दिस ओबेइंग थिंग, नो नो नो, ऐसा नहीं है शायद। दीज आर नेचुरल प्रोसेसेस जहां से ये सब चीजें निकला है।
So, Ninar, can you just put that amazing slide which you had made on doctrine of two natures? because there lies the
Yes,
answer
yes.
of Vidya, what he was talking about.
Here is it.
Yeah, so
7.
over here, yeah, so over here he actually points it out that the true nature he actually derives it from Aristotle.
Mm-hmm.
So I will be quoting. Nainer knows which part I'm talking about. So he says, those Aristotle called slaves do not grasp the nature of these higher principles, depending on the benevolent coercion of their superiors to give form to the chaos around and within them. So apparently, he flattered himself that he and his students were distinguished by their knowledge of human differences, and hence by their exceptional capacities, they were those meant to rule, not meant to obey.
You see?
So he adopted from that, actually, that position of Aristotle. So
Exactly. It's
Aristotle
dualism. You can see.
argues that.
Right. It's a dualism.
So
There is
he
no
he
spontaneity
argues
here.
from that point.
It's a synthetic dualism.
Uh, the whole rationalistic argument which Aristotle gives, right, in his, I don't know, politics mein hai shayad. I'm not remembering that. Niner and Vimarsda, you all can speak on that,
Uh,
I guess.
One particular thing I can notice, he doesn't actually quote Aristotle, but he quotes Plato from Xenophon's a lot. He's very inspired by
Okay,
Plato.
okay.
Hmm.
Mhm.
But here also,
Yeah,
matlab,
after
what
all,
these guys sorry,
ideal. No, he was an idealist after all, so
right?
Plato to ho gayi. Yeah, Vijit, please.
हाँ नहीं मैं बोल रहा था कि यार तो इवोला का जो डॉक्ट्रिन है बेसिकली दिस इज द डॉक्ट्रिन ऑफ स्प्लिट that we have been talking for for the longest time, right? The split, the schism. This is exactly that. I mean, it feels like I am catering it with new words and terms. I mean, someone has already told it before. So it is a bit
Mm.
disheartening and exciting at the same time, right? Maybe I am talking in a very different vocabulary, but it is the same
Yes,
idea.
yes.
It's the same idea. So I have to find something new.
He did at the end, towards when he comes to the solutions, he comes to quite a problematic conclusion.
Hmm.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
Unibomber case, which Vimarsda talked about. Basically, those are the solutions of his that negate the
Unibomber is in.
negation. There was some.
Ted Kaczynski, I think his name is Ted Kaczynski or something.
Yeah, Ted. Yeah, Ted Kaczynski.
So this guy was a
So guys,
domestic terrorist in.
you guys I think we should also give a talk on this one, yeah. That guy, do you know, I think Giovanni Gentile or Giovanni Gentile. He was also a fascist philosopher. In
Yeah,
fact,
yeah,
he is the father of fascism, by the way. Giovanni Gentile or Gentile, I don't
Oh,
know.
I see. I
yeah.
did
So
read
Nainer,
little about him.
he's mentioned in the
so
book, right? Nainer at the first point uh,
He is.
in Evola's early introduction. Yeah,
I think that guy was influenced by this guy, I guess. I don't know, or maybe they are from the same time.
No,
By
no.
the way, hmm?
Julius Evola was inspired by someone else called Rene Guénon. He
No, no, I am
he
talking
believed.
कि वो जेंटिल वाला जो
Yeah.
बंदा था, जेंटाइल, जियोनी जेंटिल, जेंटाइल.
okay, so
Oh no,
on that,
they were different. They were different.
yeah. So, yeah, basically, at first, our guy Evola was inspired by idealism. So while he was
Yes.
exploring that, he came on to this figure, Giovanni. So he was also idealist, but he was also father of fascism, right? Fascistic
Hmm.
ideology. So
Hmm.
he just strayed away from that. He went into Buddhism and Rene Guénon. He was not interested much more with that guy anymore.
And Evola actually did not like his own Italian fascists. He liked more of the
Hmm.
German fascists.
Hmm.
But he even criticized Hitler that he's also not doing right. So he's very confusing guy, Evola.
Hmm.
No, I mean, I always wonder, okay, कि यार ठीक है, फ्रॉम दिस स्पिरिचुअलिटी, राइट, फ्रॉम दिस स्पिरिचुअल expectation, in the sense कि I can see my mind and the whole cycle of the world, right, कि ठीक है, there is this whole dual world, like I can see it, right, almost I can see it, like with I can see my mind, I can see this world. So that gives me spirituality, or whatever you call it, spiritual transcendence or whatever. And then Buddha comes, right? Buddha say कि ठीक है, you need meditation, introspection and all these things, right, for transcendence. But then he, like, from there, I mean, this much is clear, I mean, we know we can, it is possible. But from there, okay, so till Buddha, okay, there is this Chinese culture, Japanese culture, right, and a lot of other cultures. But from there, the idea of Brahma, for example, this is such a big jump, and there is very little literature written on it. अगर बुद्ध और सांख्य हम लोग देखें, वो भी लगभग सेम लेवल पे है, बट उसके बाद वो जो जंप आता है ब्रह्म की ओर, वहां पे लिटरेचर है ही नहीं, मतलब वो गायब है वो जगह, राइट. एंड इफ इट इज ट्रू कि ठीक है भाई, अगर ब्रह्म मिल सकता है, व्हाट एवर, राइट, नाउ हाउ टू डू इट. लोग बोल रहे ठीक है, मेडिटेशन है, पतंजलि है हमारा, योग सूत्र है, बट मतलब देर इज नो राइटिंग अबाउट इट. देर इज समथिंग मिसिंग देयर. That's the most vital part, right, of human metaphysical knowledge.
Yeah.
And I find it very weird. मतलब मतलब इन ए वे इवोला जो बोल रहा है, ईस्टर्न फिलोसफी हो गया, फिर मतलब इसी इसी के इर्द गिर्द लोग घूमते रहते हैं. शोपेनहावर आ गया, थोड़ा सा एक पेसिमिस्टिक टेक ले लिया. फिर अपना यहीं के आसपास अपना फ्रेडरिक नीत्शा भी घूमता रहता है, उबरमेंच ये सब लेके, राइट. यहाँ से वो ब्रह्म वाला जो जंप है, वो तो बहुत बड़ा, वो सबसे बड़ा जंप है यार वो. वहां पे हिंदुइज्म बाकी चीजों से, बाकी सारे जो आइडियोलॉजी है वहाँ अलग कर लेता है, एंड इट नीड्स टू बी एक्सप्लोर्ड. एंड
Well, one thing
वी
was
रिटेन.
also that these guys were very disconnected individual thinkers, while our Hindu philosophy was developed in a much more systematic way whenever it was.
प्रोबेबली, या प्रोबेबली, या दैट जंप इज, डूड, दैट इज द बिगेस्ट terrestrial jump ever.
So, so by the way, question for all of you, Nenar, Vijitda, Vimasda also. Basically, this guy Matthew Rose at the end, after critiquing Evola and explaining him, he says that Evola did not live in hopeful anticipation. So Nenar explained it, right? That the whole aspect of like how Hindus believe in Swarga or Christians believe in heaven,
Kunal,
Evola calls it a hallucination. And then he says he wished for a world after liberalism where holiness was again experienced in the otherwise cruel necessities of today. Both Christianity and liberalism teach us to see such necessities as things to be reformed and in need of redemption. Nenar, any comments on this portion, like both Christianity and liberalism? Why Matthew Rose brought this into, uh, especially in this area? Why was it needed
You're
for him
talking
to
about this
bring
slide
this?
probably.
Yeah.
One second, I'll just go back to my notes. Bijita, you can comment on it if you have anything.
Sure, बताओ ना,
Like
ये
the
सीन क्या
author.
है, ये बोल क्या रहा है.
So so this guy, but he's the liberal guy, okay, who's commenting on Evola. So he's like anti-Evola and all. At the end, he's trying to say that since Evola tries to find even in cruel realities of life some sort of spiritual meaning, unlike that, we as those representing Christians and liberals, we see these cruel necessities of life as something which needs to be removed or reformed, unlike people like Evola who cherish tradition and all. So I didn't
Right.
understand why the liberal had to bring in Christianity into it, especially in this area. Like, how
No,
does it
no, no,
matter?
it is the herd mentality ना कि वो sheep या lamb create करना जो होता है, right? कि so for example, मतलब ये और थोड़ा ज्यादा प्रोजेक्शन हो रहा है, but you know the idea of spherical cow, right? So what we do for
Hmm.
Yeah.
Of course.
right? So when we say कि science explain everything, how much can science really explain? So for example, if I ask you, okay, what is the volume of a cow? As a scientist, as a physicist, what would I do? I will check the uh, like, okay, the radius around the belly of the cow, right? I will draw a sphere, and then I will say the volume of the cow is whatever 4 pi/3 r cubed, where r is the radius around the belly. Okay. Now, okay, so it works. Like, okay, so then I can draw, obviously. Matlab, if I get more technical, I will form some kind of Taylor series around it to get the exact volume of the cow. But the problem here is I am approximating a real thing with some sort of a model, right? Again, I'm assuming ki, okay, there may be some transcendental form of a cow which is close to the form of a sphere. Hence, it is 4 pi/3 r cubed for a given whatever r I am defining here. But in the process of finding volume, I am defining cow as spherical. And in the process, I am losing the very essence of it. Now, let's put it here in Christianism. So when Christianism or any Abrahamism, right, it want to expand. Now, in order to expand it, it works on a set of fundamental principles. One, कि हमें अगर वो भेड़ create करना है, it doesn't see human being as a unique being with a unique spirit. Okay, it sees everything as like lamb. It doesn't talk to a human being, right? It sees it as a data कि इसके दिमाग में घुसना है. So obviously, they approximate a human being as a being with a quote unquote spherical morality, right? क्योंकि सबको यूनिफॉर्म कर पाएगा तभी तो सबके अंदर यूनिक मतलब यूनिफॉर्म तरीके से घुस पाएगा वो. ठीक है. So in the process, it actually enforces each human being to lose the uniqueness of his existence. ठीक है. तो उसी तरह से ये जो लैम का एक हार्ड क्रिएट करता है, हार्ड मोरालिटी क्रिएट करता है. आई थिंक दिस गाय इज टॉकिंग अबाउट दैट, राइट? कि वी आर एक्चुअली लूजिंग द व्हाट वाज द कोट यू शोड मी समथिंग. You gave a quote here which was very
Which one?
essential.
Uh,
This one?
which one? The
No, no,
one
I
I
think
said.
Rishi read something.
Haha. So he was saying that the cruel necessities, where Evola tends to see even spiritual meaning, for Christians and liberals, that is seen as something to be reformed and to be made better. That was the quote he gave,
Mm-hmm.
Matthew Rose.
Right. I think it is the fight between this uniqueness versus uniformity, right? I guess.
Hmm. Might be the case, yeah. Ninar and Vimarsda, any comment? I guess we have come to the last stage for discussion as well.
And if you think from that perspective, right? For example, I don't know so I did not follow the whole lecture. मैं I think 1 घंटा तक follow किया फिर मैं join किया.
Mhm.
But I don't know whether you discussed polytheism in the context of this guy Evola, right? But I think again because
No,
you guys are showing me, huh?
he's pro-pagan. He has actually written a book called Pagan Imperialism. So in favor of paganism,
अच्छा अच्छा.
and from that he entirely derives from Hindu philosophy, also quoting Bhagavad Gita and various other
And so
texts.
he used the word schism as well because you quoted it.
The Christianity schism, right? That one, he uses
Ha
that
ha
word.
ha. Right. Okay, so he
Christianity
uses
schism.
that as well. Okay, okay, okay.
Yeah.
When I was writing, I saw I did not know this guy. So it is so, yeah, it is so weird. Anyway,
His
um,
I am not exactly on the same page when it comes to his criticism of Christianity, because it's a
hmm,
little different one. But
okay.
when he starts off with the idea of tradition, till there, I think his ideas are quite useful.
Hmm,
Bijita,
hmm,
I'll just briefly do my outro, the
hmm.
end points, right? So, uh, what might us modern Hindus take from Ebola, and what should we perhaps firmly reject? What we might take can be that his critique of,
Meaning, right? So
yes,
basically, we have to take key. Uh, so there is this. I mean, Hinduism also talks about meaning. Yeah, come on. मतलब
I'll finish my
काफी टाइम
point.
let me put it in the context of मतलब जो हम बार बार
Yeah, yeah.
सुनते हैं, धर्म अर्थ काम मोक्ष. अब मतलब ये इतना ज्यादा अर्थ को बोला गया है कि ये बेसिकली वेल्थ है. व्हाट इफ हमारे जो एंसेस्टर ने ये डाले थे यहाँ पे. सो फर्स्ट यू धर्मा, देयर इज धर्मा. सो प्रोबब्ली दैट इज द व्हाट एवर ग्रैंड नेचुरल ऑर्डर और मोरालिटी. अर्थ प्रोबेबली मीन्स मीनिंग. आई मीन, बिकॉज until unless you believe in meaning, you don't know how to interpret the natural morality. And then karma matlab probably karma, because once you understand the meaning, you start doing karma, and through it you get moksha. I mean, matlab, this is what I believe. Yeah, dharma artha kam moksha. I don't propagate it with matlab much vigor, because someone will again grill me. उस book पे वहां पे लिखा गया है कि अर्थ का मतलब तो लक्ष्मी है. But I don't know, मेरे मेरे लिए धर्म अर्थ काम मोक्ष इसी तरह है.
So what I believe is a little different. That karma is basically a desire for any object or any, basically any kind of desire,
हाँ, सो
object or
डिजायर
person
सी
or
काम
anything.
और कर्म
And
में बिल्कुल थोड़ा सा फर्क है.
artha is a
Until unless you
resource
don't have
that
desire, how
satisfies
would
that
you
desire.
take action, right? एक्शन के लिए भी तो वो डिजायर
Mhm.
आता है ना. If you
Yeah.
completely without desire, you cannot do any karma, यार.
Anyways, I'll finish my outro. That the point I was continuing. So,
Hmm.
what can we take
Mhm.
out of Evola's critique? What we can perhaps take is that Evola's
Right. So
critique of
one is
pure.
meaning, right? तो
Hey, Dada, I
एक
was
चीज तो बार
finishing.
बार बोला जाता है, उपनिषद जैसे है. उपनिषद में बार
Hmm.
बार एक चीज बोला जाता है जिसका जो वर्ड है भूमा. Bhuma is like, okay, you have to मतलब okay, there can at each point in life, at each moment in life, there are always two choices. ठीक है. एक जो क्षुद्र मतलब एक क्षुद्र मतलब जिसे बंगाली में कहते हैं कि द इंफीरियर
Yeah,
चॉइस एंड
I'll just
भूमा द
finish my
हायर
point
चॉइस.
on that meaning thing. I'll just finish that point of what we
अच्छा
might
अच्छा, यू
take
वांट
and
टू
what
से
we
समथिंग.
reject.
अच्छा अच्छा, बोलो ना.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Because you were taking a pause,
So
so I thought like you were asking me. Sorry.
no, I was reading out actually. I
I
have
see.
notes on this. So what we take from Evola is the his critique of purely materialistic modernity, because it does point to something real. For example, India's modernization that we see in the last few years, last few decades, you can say, it shouldn't simply mean copying Western consumer capitalism, and it shouldn't just mean GDP growth without any regard for spiritual or our community values. Progress doesn't mean that we abandon all traditional practices, or we abandon traditional practices at all, because something valuable is actually really being lost. The question is how to modernize while maintaining that cultural continuity intact. So, his emphasis on meaning and transcendence, that is something we need to really address, because the in modern day discourses we do not approach any discourse with these things in mind. If we imagine how it would look like if we approach everything with the meaning of activities in mind, the meaning of hierarchies in mind, the meaning of positions of people in life. If everything was simply reduced to choice, uh, the freedom of choice, the freedom to satisfy yourself with some material or another material, if hierarchies are purely seen as oppressive rather than even potentially meaningful, if traditions are simply dismissed because they are old, they're outdated, so on, rather than us evaluating them on the merits they have offered for us for thousands of years, and on their own ground, on their own basis. This creates a general spiritual poverty if we reject all this. The hunger for meaning that Ebola responds to is very legitimate, and we need to identify that. What we must reject, though, is the kind of wholesale rejection of everything that comes with modernity. It is not necessary that the idea of equality itself is completely separate from what we have in Hinduism, right? Then the kind of dignity also he denies completely. That is also not exactly what we have. And this last point, perhaps later Rishi can comment on it. Evola also talks about taking the left hand path. We know where he's copying that idea from, and he's distorting that
Mhm.
idea as well. And that kind of you can say radicalism is probably has no basis in our Hindu culture. So that we must soundly reject, I must say. And
Completely.
in in a way, Evola has actually replaced a genuine spirituality and genuine tradition with political ideology, and this is problematic. We we need to really make a differentiation between our traditions and traditions or political aspirations, you can say. And also the ideas of you can say the spiritual aristocracy and so on. Those are still debatable, so but I think broadly we cannot really take them seriously. So yeah, that is my end point. That we might have some answers from Ebola, but we do not need to borrow a lot more from. Yeah, you can have any points on this, Rishi?
Amazing, amazing analysis. आज बहुत अच्छा stream हुआ, Niner. And also on that point of left-hand path, so for the audience, I will just say this. Apparently, he also studied tantric texts a lot. So from there, he took the word Vama Marga, and the left-hand
He
path,
made it
and
left
he
hand path.
twisted it into, yeah, exactly. So he inverted it into a sort of political action oriented program where uh, actions such as which are very much condemnable, which are petty crimes as well, those he called as the left hand path towards getting political emancipation. So that's the context which Nainer was referring to. Yeah, Vimarsda and everyone, please.
Uh, Actually, on this left hand, Bhamacharya, what we're talking about, let me actually share to the what I think audience might already know, but I think this needs to be shared. So in Sangam talks, there is a new podcast they have actually published it. So this is a manifestation of the divine origins and perceived forms. Dr. Robert Savoda. So he wrote a very well-known book on tantra. So I would request everybody go and watch this podcast. Okay, and maybe Vijitda, maybe we can do a reaction session later on this, because he has
Sure.
talked about a lot of things on tantra, and also Niner and Yosa can join to do watch this podcast in Sangam Talks, okay, with Dr. Robert Savoda. Brilliant book, brilliant writer, brilliant book. The way he has written things is quite fascinating. And to finish off my point here, I think what has really happened, okay, is that how would I say, the modern world has removed the sankalpa, okay, the creativity of our daily existence. When a mother cooks food for his child, correct, there is a purpose, there is a sankalp, correct? creativity behind that process of cooking food for the family. But the same task is now everything has become mechanized. Correct, there is no creativity left in our life anymore. Everything is mechanized. You are doing a job to earn a salary. Your life cannot be that only. Your life cannot be that 35 years you will go to office, do your work because you have to do it, and physically, mentally, creatively, you are not attached with that work. It is just a mechanical thing of doing things just for the sake of doing things. I think that modern world has taken that purpose, creativity from us, and that is why we have seen so much of dissatisfaction, so much of mental health problems, people ending their lives because they can't find any purpose after 40 or 50, people becoming like unstable, sad. So that is something which is, it needs to be fixed. And I think Evola's work is important in that sense, that this lack of purpose which the modern world has given us or thrust upon us is it is an existential threat to human civilization and human actually existence. Yes, that's my
Absolutely.
take.
Yeah, so I wanted to say
Absolutely.
something here about creativity, right? So you the okay, so creativity inherently is non-conformity, right? Creativity is like, okay, जो चल रहा था तुम कुछ नया create कर रहे हो. Now inherently, intrinsically, it is non-conformal. But when someone's creativity demands conformity, that is not like genuine creativeness. And the anomaly, the paradox in Abrahamism is that maybe the prophet in some cult, that guy was creative in shaping up a thought, chain of thought, right? But then, like, the next moment, that creativity started to behove, right? Started to ask for conformity from the others, and that's where the creativity becomes dangerous. So whenever there is some creativity, so मतलब okay, so for example, right, हम लोग अभी जैसे मॉडर्निज्म का बात कर रहे हैं ना. मॉडर्निज्म में यू जस्ट लुक अराउंड यार, कितने सारी चीजें बन चुका है, राइट? मतलब यू जस्ट लुक अराउंड, एवरीथिंग समवन हैज क्रिएटेड इट. तो इस पे ये बोल देना कि यार वो जिसने ये क्रिएट किया था, दैट गाय वाज प्रोबेबली नॉट, मतलब नॉट जेन्युइन, और ही वाज नॉट गेटिंग डिलाइट, आनंद आउट ऑफ इट, that would be probably false. But then the moment when those creative acts started to chain people into conformity, that is where we should be, मतलब as an individual I should be very much alert. और यहाँ पे ही
uh,
क्रिएटिविटी का सबसे बड़ा पैराडॉक्स आता है. द मॉडर्निज्म, इट इज ब्रिंगिंग this abstract nihilism in our psyche, not because modernism is not based on creativity, but modernism is a creative process that is asking for conformity. और वहां से निहिलिज्म आ रहा है. बी ओरिजिनल, बी क्रिएटिव, ठीक है? और वहां पे फिर उसके साथ, अगर मॉडर्निज्म तुम्हें कुछ ऑफर कर रहा है फॉर विच यू डोंट नीड टू बी कॉन्फॉर्मल, adopt that, and that will bring you happiness.
yeah, Bijitda, but the concept of modernism is that like you don't have to use your brains, you have to follow instructions. How many people I correct na, a scientist, correct, a person maybe in ISRO, a scientist, or maybe somebody who at the higher echelons, correct, they have the freedom, correct, an IIT professor, because he has a freedom to do a lot of things. he he feels his job is much more creative, much more satisfaction. But if you see the overall workforce that a modern world employs, correct, as an employment, how many people are IIT professors? And even IIT professors are uh, like they are frustrated with a lot of things, rules and
Because they are
regulations.
not being original. When you stop being original, you start to become
Ex-
frustrated. When you start to
yeah,
become conformal and
yes,
obedient.
yes, but the modernity actually correct. Modernity kills modernity by rules and regulation is killing that correct. It is breeding
Yes,
conformity
because it
because
is
you
asking for
cannot.
that conformity ना. It is asking for that conformity. कि मैं एक theory दे रहा हूँ, कितने लोग मेरे पीछे खड़े हो सकते हो? And that is the problem.
Yes, but that's what I'm coming from. That
मतलब
because
in my
there is a
opinion, the happiest guy who
hmm,
got the most delight out of Buddhism was Buddha himself. That's my opinion.
absolutely, and that I agree with. But the problem is that the way the modern structure is created, the way the modern framework is created, correct? Example, can take my example, correct? I love doing work, correct? So same work which was very boring for one person, somebody would do their work for 7 8 hours and they will go home. I would be sitting in the office and I would come to office, let's say 10 a.m. I would leave office at 11 p.m. because I like that work, that go and troubleshooting things, learning new things. So at an individual level, that is fine. But if you look at the societal level, the majority, a bulk of the workforce is not creatively connected to the work that they are doing to earn a living, and that's a bigger problem that we need to address.
Right,
That's what
right.
I'm
Because
saying.
you are not. That's the problem. That because that guy is not being creative enough. Hence, if that guy is not creative enough, he's not creating meaning, at least in his
No,
own life.
my argument is a little bit different. My argument is the way the framework is designed is actually the framework is designed to kill your creativity. It is not the other way around. I am an exception rather than a rule. If 90% of the workforce doesn't feel creative, doesn't feel their creativity is being utilized to get the work done and get a salary, it means the framework is to be blamed, not the. Yeah, if 90% of people were creative in the same framework and 10% did not feel, then I would say the problem is with the individual. But the majority of the people are not feeling satisfied with their work, then it's a framework problem. You can't be the outliers can't be the the norm. That's
Right. I mean,
my
I agree
So,
with
opinion.
you. I am not.
Bhupendra,
See, I am not.
Hmm, hmm,
I am not arguing about on this point at all. I am
hmm,
saying
hmm,
कि
hmm,
in that framework, the
hmm,
only person who could be happy is the person who
hmm.
created that framework, because at least he
Yes,
showed
yes,
some
yes.
creativity, hence he got some delight out of it. Not
Yeah.
that's what I'm saying, conformity, right? मतलब एक बार वो जो conformity वो जो डिमांड कर रहा है, जब कॉन्फर्म लोग
Hmm,
होना चालू कर देंगे, तब
hmm,
वो
hmm,
जॉय, वो जो डिलाइट है,
hmm,
वो
hmm,
खत्म हो जाएगा. आई एम सेइंग
hmm.
प्रिसाइजली दैट. नाउ
Yeah.
कॉन्फॉर्मिटी इज नॉट प्रॉब्लमेटिक इन इवोला's पॉइंट. ये मुझे थोड़ा पढ़ना होगा. बट हाँ, जितना
uh,
लेक्चर
uh,
मैंने सुना उससे तो लग रहा है कि इवोला हैज नॉट अ ह्यूज प्रॉब्लम विद कॉन्फॉर्मिटी. बट यहाँ पे शायद
no,
हम
no, no.
मैं
He,
एट दिस.
uh, so if you listen to the starting of it, it basically starts here only. This is one of the crucial points to his work. Why conformity is not problematic is because he sees conformity itself as giving meaning. And it is not everyone's privilege to be creative at all. That that we think that creativity alone brings joy is not true either. Some people say if a structure itself is made in a way that it gives you a lot of meaning in every small activity you do, whether conforming to that structure itself, that will give you joy. So in that sense, conformity is good. It's good in the sense that the structure itself should be good. And creativity has its own place, but it's not necessarily the thing that brings joy. That would be my point.
आई सी ओके.
Okay, the last point, Bochalidi has made a very good and important point. But Bochalidi, there is a problem here. Problem is not that you are wrong, you are right. The problem is, take an example of companies. I will not name the company. A company which people aspire to be employed there. Okay, it's the people. Millions of people's goal is to be employed by that company. Okay, that company, you know. Now that company provides sleeping places, food, gym, everything. So the structure, the framework is telling you, you come to office at 8 a.m., take a bath, have a breakfast, do your work, sleep in the office, again wake up, again do gym, again do work, and go to home at midnight. And sometimes they will tell you you can come even in the midnight. So some people might go to the office at midnight, do the work, and at home take morning in the have breakfast and come back. So the framework is designed in such a way that it is not letting you to have the satsang, to have the spirituality, to have that hobby, because the framework is designed to keep you at your work as long hours as possible, so that you don't have to cultivate all these things. So that is the problem that I'm talking about. Yeah, last points to everybody before we close up.
No, no, family, yaar. Matlab, what? Matlab, family, formation of society, reproduction. These are inherently meaningful. I mean, how can you deny those facts? How can
Yeah,
family formation? I mean, you face new things every day and you try to solve it. I mean, that's inherently creative. So, I mean, that's the point. When someone says ki yaar, matlab, homemaking is the most boring job. No, homemaking is also a very creative job. It's just that in the eyes of a capitalist, it is like, okay, it is not productive because it is not inherently that much utilitarian. It is not enhancing the utility function of the society, right? They have literally developed a utility function. वहाँ पे it is not whatever increasing the GDP and all these things. So in the eyes of a capitalist, probably that is not a creative job because it is not benefiting him. But otherwise, it is a very creative job. I mean, uh, you
yeah,
take the
the
example of Ganesha, for example. Ganesha was built like अपने हाथों से पार्वती ने बनाई थी गणेशा को. That's a creative act. यहाँ ऋषि ने एक अच्छा पॉइंट बोला. Conformity with higher ideals would be good, frankly. Yes, that's the point, right? I mean, when the conformity actually stoops down to keep high mere copying and all these things, obviously it will bring some boredom.
okay. Anybody else anything to say before we?
Yes, yes. I have something to say. Narayan, pranam sabhi ko. So
Hmm.
अभी कुछ देर पहले
Hmm.
जो होस्ट जी ने एक पॉडकास्ट
Host.
दिखाया किसी गोरे का. हाँ, तो
हाँ हाँ हाँ
मेरा
हाँ.
यही कहना है कि ये जो गोरे लोगों का जो भी बोलना है हमारे
Hmm.
बारे में, मतलब हमारे धर्म के बारे
Hmm.
में
Hmm.
या फिर हमारे
Hmm.
धर्म के जो अंग है, तो
Hmm.
मेरा कहना यही है कि इनको आप सुनिए, बट इनको आप हमारा जो चीज है उसको जानने के लिए मत सुनिए, आप उसको इसलिए सुनिए कि वो हमारे चीज को कैसे देख रहे हैं उसके लिए सुनिए. So what I meant to say is, do not learn from them what is ours. Okay, they aren't capable of teaching our things to ourselves. Okay, so the things they talk, that say go on and say about, like you listen to them to only know their view on our thing. Like let's say, for example, let's say we should take the famous Sir John Woodrow,
Hmm. Hmm.
his
Hmm.
book Introduction to Tantra Shastra and other thing. Okay, so it is
Hmm.
a
Hmm.
pretty tough book. Okay, it is a pretty tough
Hmm.
book. People like many have promoted it on all, but
Hmm.
you should read it. But when you will read it, you will come to know that how their mind processes our thing. Okay, but
Hmm.
before that, like you read their stuff. Before that, you
Hmm.
should read.
your stuffs, I mean our stuffs, okay, so that your principle has a strong base. So you that do not get diluted, dilapidated by their notion of thinking. Okay, like what do you say that सिद्धांत बल, अपना सिद्धांत बल पहले मजबूत करो, फिर उनको सुनो, वरना दोनों मिलके जो खिचड़ी बनेगा उसमें फंस जाओगे. मेरा यही कहना है.
हाँ, see, like, yeah, you are, see, generally, my like suggestion to everybody is that, correct, I listen to a lot of people, correct. I don't listen to only one person and make up my opinion. I will be listening to Bijidda, I will listening to Ninar, I will listen to Rishi, I listen to you. So generally, I'm talking about that this person has written a book. Okay, so go and listen what he says. I am not saying that okay, you should only listen to him and form your opinion. And generally, that will be the norm. Correct. As an inquisitive mind, you will consume as much as possible. Somebody who is consuming, let's say, watch this podcast, which has happened with Sangam Talks. The same person might be recommended a podcast on Rajanundi. He will watch that as well. So like that will go on. Like it's rarely an occasion in social media that if somebody is watching one type of content, then he will not be recommended other content of the same type. But yes, normally in general people would be exploring things. Like like
Yes.
people might, if somebody is reading that book, they might buy one more book of other author what he has said.
Yes, but they should first get their principles correct. After that, they should do all those. So there are tons of books already available. Like you have libraries
Even
of libraries. Anyway,
see, the problem right now is, it is not that. The problem is that people are, see, our authors, unfortunately, our authors are not even, like, even I don't know a lot of authors who have written good books on Tantra. So look at other ways. If they consume, because he has come to a Sangam Talk podcast, people are watching him. People might be actually discover the works of other Indian authors just because they have watched this podcast, because their podcast even doesn't exist. All the authors you are talking about, correct? They are not in the public media limelight, or their work is not discussed. So they are even like hidden from us. So by watching this podcast,
well,
they might get interested
that is
and
a
they
purpose
might go
too.
and buy new book.
That 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 hidden thing has also a purpose. That also serves a purpose anyway. But people won't agree to it. But like tantra is not like what people think of it. It is too complex.
Uh-huh.
It has nadas,
Mhm.
bindus, chakras, vayus,
Mhm.
nadis, and tons of things. But so before
Mhm.
understanding it, we need to understand your deha, your senses. What do we say senses in anyway? So you're there,
Yeah,
like
the
body,
journey
mind,
needs to
spirit. You
start,
need to
na.
understand all those. Then get to.
The journey needs to start somewhere,
No,
na,
they first.
somewhere.
No, they do not need to start there. That's the thing. They start there, then uh, end up in a pit of facade. They need to start from the very basic things, which they do not want to do because they are very
That
basics.
that
But
will take
anyway, we
200
aren't
years.
going into all that. Uh, so, and what Vijita said about that capitalism and woman thing, yes, it is true. Like an actual ideal framework, according to our thing, is what like is that framework providing us with like the four purusarthas? Are they providing? No. Like capitalism is also like capitalism do not have that ability to provide it. Obviously, for what Vijita says, because if you want to have those four purusarthas, you cannot keep the woman equation out of it. You need it. Like without it, it is not complete in any way.
Okay.
Of course, like yeah,
Okay.
that's it.
So we are done with our today's great session. So we will connect tomorrow again. Tomorrow we have a special episode on Iran being uploaded. So we have done the interview. So tomorrow we will publish the shorts as well as the full podcast on Iran. So do stay tuned, do subscribe, do share our channel, and do support us. We need your support. Okay, become a member or do some super chats. Okay, or share your contributions on the UPI. The QR code is there. So your support is going to keep the channel running. So thank you. Jai Shri Ram. Vande Mataram.
वंदे मातरम, जय श्री राम।